And we're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Whiskey Charlie, the War Game Chat live show every month on YouTube. I'm Mo from Mo's Game Table, and joining me tonight are my co-hosts, everyone's favorite Gimp with the Limp, Nate the Gimpy Gamer, Rogers.
What's up, guys?
On YouTube.
Nice to be here.
I'm Mo from Mo's Game Table, and joining me tonight,
Dan the Man Pancaldi from No Enemies Here, Wargaming News, and he is joined by another healthcare, or I should say smart healthcare type of guy tonight, our special guest, Luke Hughes from Burden of Command, who's going to be discussing the upcoming tactical RPG that they've been working on now for a few years. And we're real excited to hear the current status of it and the development and everything that we've got to look forward to at that game. Welcome, guys.
Rudeness. I was rude. Dan, being technical, I left my volume on the live stream. So I think it went over you, Dan. So could you introduce yourself again? Because I just feel bad.
I'm Dan.
Much better.
Everybody knows the guy with the box and the lid.
So how's everybody doing? Everybody's locked in, and we're all dealing with all sorts of craziness right now.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to speak to Luke here. I got some serious questions. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I have to say a little bit of fair warning about this crew. There was some inappropriate attempts at touching given current conditions, and I said no virtual touching. So that's been clarified.
6 feet.
Hey, man, come on. It's sensitive, delicate.
I get enough of that for my damn kids, man.
Don't look at me.
We look forward to 8:30 when the kids go to bed and we get to be left alone and we don't have a 3-year-old running and bashing
right
into
3-year-old. Oh my gosh, a 3-year-old. Wow. Forces of nature. I've had 4 children, so.
Oh wow.
And I've got 3 and the wife wants a 4th. So.
Oh boy.
I feel your pain. 5,
Slow down,
3, and 8 months.
How does he play board games with 3-year-old? I think we've got something weird going on. Impossible to play board games with a 3-year-old. I mean, you set it up, it's over.
Dude, I'll tell you, she gets so cute. My little girl's 3 and my little boy's 5. He'll play. He loves throwing the dice. But my little girl, I had set up Core Space. I talked to you guys about that one before, and it's a miniatures game. So you had the little diorama and miniatures, and for her, it was a dollhouse. So she was sitting at my lap, and she's like, "Daddy, we'll put the table here, and we're gonna put this guy here." And she just kept moving the pieces around. She sat there for an hour, and she loved it. So
Excellent.
I'm getting her involved young.
Nice.
She's not exactly playing the game for her. Like I said,
the mortar crew over here on the hill, and
we'll vaporize those guys.
Okay, so when do we start blasting Luke here? Huh?
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
Dan's getting impatient there.
Time is money. Money is time.
All right. Nate, you have a question? No.
Where's my money? Speaking of it, good.
Well, I do want to start out by saying that there was this game. I first personally noticed it in 2017, I believe, is when I signed up for the newsletter. And what I thought was really interesting is I had some conversations with you about this, Luke, in the past.
Yeah.
What immediately drew me to it was not only the intent on being tactically accurate, but capturing the human aspect of combat, specifically of the command role, keeping the morale of your troops high while also staying on mission, knowing also that the orders that you issue are going to lead to your troops' death. Not all of them necessarily, but some of them are going to die.
Did we say the name of the game yet, by the way?
Burden of Command.
Okay. I didn't remember if we had said it.
Yeah, occasionally, so don't worry.
My memory's bad.
But that's a pretty heavy topic to tackle. So talk about, where did this, the idea for the game come from to start with? And, what direction did you guys take initially, and how has it evolved over time?
Yeah. So first thing I'll say about Burden of Command is it's a leadership RPG. Now, I hope you notice, and I know the community I'm talking to tonight, particularly the board game and war board gaming crew, I didn't say war game. Now, we draw on war games for the tacticals. The Battlefield, I think we can talk later, plenty of influences, Conflict of Heroes, Squad Leader, even, more recent games that you care to name. We can talk about any of those. But it's not that. Nor is it an RPG in the sense of, it's a Baldur's Gate or something. It's a leadership RPG, we think pretty distinctive. So how did it come about? I think that story in itself will tell you something. So one night I was playing Crusader Kings, a digital game, where you play a medieval family in Europe, Renaissance period. And Funny, my wife used to complain a lot about that because she'd hear the babies being born. You know, they do the baby sounds. She said, "What's this game you're playing?" So, but suddenly it hit me, you know, what would it be like to take a family of officers across World War II Europe? And of course, I mean, I hope you're instantly thinking Band of Brothers, because of course I started thinking Band of Brothers, right? So if I were to sort of take an icon for the game, though I'm not allowed to, but verbally I can, Dick Winters, right? Band of Brothers, studying leadership, small unit leadership. So that to me is what the game about. That was the starting inspiration. Before that, to be fair, actually I really was thinking sort of squad leader level Panzer General, right? Light, but at the squad leader level, range combat, so forth. But that night, I suddenly thought, oh my God, leadership. I've been thinking about leaders. And if you play squad, I will give board games credit, right? Absolutely. They've been emphasizing leadership forever in the games. I mean, hell, it was called Squad Leader, right? And I think that's one of the deep reasons it appeals. It's so human, even though it's cardboard. And it's the leader there and his men, and people are breaking and cowering and getting and dying and going berserk. So in some sense, you know, the board game saw leadership RPG a long time ago. And two quick things, and then I'll stop going on. You know, I remember the original Squad Leader, to speak to the board game tradition. And in that, you could, before ASL, you could pick your little officer, actually an NCO, a corporal, who might, I can't remember if they could get to lieutenant or something. Maybe if you could survive through scenarios. So the first scenario in Squad Leader is, of course, Streets of Stalingrad or whatever. 100% of the time, every damn time I played that scenario, my corporal died right away, you know, out in the streets. So I never got to advance in that. And then, of course, I have my show and tell today. Credit goes to
I was going to say
Nice.
I mean, they did. This isn't quite a leadership RPG, but it is a World War II man-to-man RPG. It's pretty close in some ways. So that's the origin, digitally, actually. But, you know, Crusader King, Baldur's Gate, but a strong tradition in the board games, not just a tactical, but hey, you know.
Dan,
So-
you got a question?
Well,
Yeah, I'll let Dan go first because I know he's
just
died.
chopping at the bit.
thanks. Look, this is a huge undertaking you're doing, right? You're gonna be lambasted by people, the grognards and this and that. And I've read a few articles and I've listened to a podcast. And one thing that freaked me out, because I was so interested into knowing, it was so technical, everything you were saying, but then you said, hey, it's a game. Now, I'm like, shit, it's a game. Okay, what does he mean by that? Are you hiding behind something when you say it's a game because of the technical difficulties that you need to have to come across?
Hey, now you told me these would be softball questions. Like, where do I buy Burning Command? How much does it cost? And can I buy it for one copy? I mean, my God, what kind of question? That's a great question. Okay, so I keep it up, Dan. I enjoy tough questions within limits. Tough questions I can answer. Otherwise, we edit them later because this isn't live, right? Okay, Dan. So
Don't tell him that.
So actually, it's sort of it is a serious question because let me take it. The topic is serious.
Yeah.
Right. People dying. All right. So my answer is I don't think Burden Command is a game. I think a Burden Command is an experience. So I'll give you an analogy. There's a digital game out there called This War of Mine, which is basically you play civilians in a sort of Sarajevo experience where, you know, it's miserable. And in the game, see, but you naturally fall back into game. So I'll say game. And it's not wrong.
Okay, I understand.
It has the wrong associations, right? So it's not a fun game. It's an experience. People hang themselves in the game. You know, if you do things wrong and you might feel guilty. And yet, remarkably, I mean, it's a crazy bet to take to do that game. 700,000, I think they may be up to 1 million now. People play that game because, you know, the connection. And I think the analogy I would make, we're talking on dangerous topics here, right? People dying in combat. Should we be touching it with a game, quote unquote? So I'm really glad you asked this. And I guess there's no right answer. I think I would defend it this way. If you don't think fictional movies should cover, if you don't think not historical movies like Band of Brothers have some legitimacy to cover death, right? Because they're covering real events.
Right.
So Now, the moment you step into fictional movies, should they be allowed, Das Boot or something, should they be allowed to cover things that didn't really happen and treat death casually? If you say no, then I don't think you should play Burden of Command, right?
Right.
But if you say yes, I don't see the distinction too much anymore. And further, I would like to push us closer to Band of Brothers or pick your favorite small unit history, than to fictional. We are fictional because you make your choices. You can do things other than historical, like in a board war game. On the other hand, we put you in a real regiment, Cotton Balers. The consulting historian John McManus has worked close. He's their official historian. Has worked closely with us. The Cotton Baler Association is friendly to us. They're the 7th Regiment of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Division. We followed his book closely. We sent an archivist in to the National Archives, got the after-action reports, another wonderful tradition of the squad leaders and so forth, but we got the hand-typed ones digitized from the captains and so forth. We have all of those. The writers read them. The scenario designers, again, for those who aren't board gamers, came from combat mission backgrounds and board war gaming. One of them is a board war game designer. I can talk about that.
Steve Overton.
Thank you. Steve Overton, who's doing a sort of 1980s tactical game, Contact Now, Red Storm. Check it out.
Real good game.
Soon.
Yep.
Oh, have you played it?
I've got a prototype of it.
Yeah, it's good. It's got a lot of chaos, but I'm getting off the topic. So the topic is very burdensome. Not saying that too jokingly now. Burdensome topic. The good news is, because we try to take it soberly, we have a lot of vets and involved, and we have combat vets. And by the way, my humble thanks to the 2 Marine vets tonight here in the broadcast. So my wife's, by the way, is a vet. They're not a combat vet, but Air Force. And I had a son who was in the Air Force. So we have some connection. My father was Navy World War II. So anyway.
Well, thank them for their service. We appreciate their service.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And so I asked them, we've asked questions about, are we handling it right? Is it okay? And the interesting thing is these guys say, the reason I'm on this team, the reason I'm supporting this, I'll say experience, but probably shorthanded game afterwards, is because you are trying to bring out, some of the realities. Of course, we can't bring out the realities, thank God, but we can touch them. We can point at them, right? The death, the responsibility, the moral quandaries. I'll give you one example. Here's something the writers did to me. I played, it's in the game. So this happens all the time. In fact, it's a very modern one. But it's in Sicily, and the Germans are holed up in a farmhouse. And you realize there are civilians in the farmhouse. Now, you get a choice. You can call on the artillery. Benefit is, of course, you're not risking your men. Downside is you're going to be killing civilians almost certainly. Or you can think about those civilians, and then you can assault, and guess what? You lose men. So I won't tell you which one I picked, but the one I pick, I still think about. And I think if I picked the other one, I'd still be thinking about it. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to make you realize some things. And as a mechanic, like permadeath, you make the decision, you don't get it back the best of our ability, kind of like Darkest Dungeon. So I could go on, but the short answer is this war of mine, point at it. Games can be serious about topics if you think fiction can be serious a topic or other forms of experience. And so that's my brief answer. On a light side, I hope we'll do a Hollywood pack someday, with.
Well, I'm extremely happy. I'm extremely happy you went that way.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Because as soon as you said it was a game, I didn't want to say I was disappointed. I wanted some realism. I wanted to really feel when I say, "Hey, Nate, go get that guy." Like
we try hard on that.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, who goes? Do I go? Does Nate go? Does Mo go? It's like, who goes, man? Excellent.
Straws.
You get them killed, they do not come back. Period.
No.
And
I'll tell you,
I remember from my playthrough on the Nerds, I remember who I got killed. I never forgot.
I was watching it earlier, and I like some of the decisions like you're talking about that it puts you to, because you can play other games that look similar. All right, so you've got like Company Heroes and crap like that out there, that it's a World War II RTS game, but this is Burden of Command is nowhere near that, and I think that's what some people are going to miss if they're just looking at the screenshots. You really need to like kick that RPG aspect, because one of the things that stood out to me is like the captain was wounded, and you have to make the choice: do we pull out now and fail the mission and try to save our captain, or do we push on and there's like a 90% chance he's going to die? I'm like, wow, that's cool. That's awesome that they're putting these real like poignant choices to the player. What do you want to do?
The best ones we can put in are the ones from history. So we had Chris Avalon, who's an increasingly famous writer, which we don't mind. I just did the Star Wars one recently, and he's a super nice guy, by the way, really supportive. Anyway, we had him early on to advise us when nobody knew us at all. Not that we're known now, but we are nothing. And we put an example in front of him. The gist of the example, I wish I had it in front of me, but you're standing there, an artillery barrage has started, and you look over at your sergeant, and you see him motioning the men forward. And you realize this is a crisis. The men could get hit by the friendly fire, and you motion him to stop, and he doesn't. And you think he's acting odd, and his rifle starts moving a little bit in your direction. What do? And there are 4 choices. And you're like, Sergeant, stand down. Another one is something like, and try and knock his rifle away. Another one is shoot him, and there's something else. Of course, absurd to shoot him. Well, 100% of the time I've asked people that one, but I can't give it as well today as the writers did it. Nobody picks shoot him. And yet that's an historical example. And maybe Gimp Gamer is recognizing who it is. It's actually, who's the crazy lieutenant in Band of Brothers?
Spears.
Spears. That was Spears. He did that. He shot the guy dead. And it was going to be a court-martial. And there's a lot of complexity around it. They decided it was rule legitimate, in that context. Mm-hmm. So, but what we blew Chris Avalon away with, guess what? That was a real situation. The actual decision was shoot him.
Hmm.
Okay, hold on. I missed something here.
Yeah.
This was like friendly fire, shoot him?
So the sergeant's basically you're the
fire's
lieutenant.
never friendly.
Yeah.
You're the lieutenant. Your sergeant's with your men. You're waiting for the friendly fire in front of you. Think so, World War I, it's World War II, out the barrage out in front of you. You're waiting for it to subside. But the sergeant, who is drunk, starts to motion the men forward. And you realize your men will get hit by the barrage as they go forward. And so Spears, in that case, shot him dead when he wouldn't, stop. And there is some indication maybe the sergeant was going to get aggressive with his gun, but it's very ambiguous. You can go read on it. There's lots of discussion. But
we'll take that other scene with Spears, which is true. I forget who was the guy who was in charge of Easy at that point after Winters was when he was up at Battalion. And he's out in a hayfield, and he just freezes in combat. And then he's like, Spears, go out there, take charge. I can't remember the guy's name, but then Spears goes out, not only takes charge of the guys, but then links up the platoons by running through the middle of the Germans and then running back through them. The Germans are just looking at him like, what the hell is this guy doing?
And the guy really did that too,
It's totally legit. It's historically accurate. And it just shows you that Spears was kind of a different character, And
talking about people being upset, we're going to have people upset. So first, what the hell are we doing talking about such serious things in a quote unquote game? And I give you my answer on that. On the other hand, when we do a German campaign, I figure we'll be hated by people on the left and the right, because we won't make the Germans all monsters, but we certainly will point out the horrible things they were doing too. And so, we'll have people upset. And I guarantee we won't do it right because I don't think there is a right way to do it. But
do they think that those things don't happen now? Those choices exist just as much today in a combat zone as they did 50,
60,000 years ago.
Black or everything white. And for instance, we'll do a Soviet campaign. That'll be very tricky, right? Like one of the reasons the Soviet soldiers didn't run was the commissar, you'll be shot dead, no retreat, Stalin's order if you back up. So what if one of the things we thought about, what if we made you a commissar? So that would be a pretty tricky situation. What would it mean to be a good person as a commissar? So kind of thing we like to do to you.
That's an expansion.
Yeah.
What's next? A happy game like Sonder Commando?
Oh, I didn't laugh. I didn't hear the end of that sentence. But we won't avoid the topics where they come up. Let's put it that way.
Well, we talked about this before. We've all talked about this offline as well as in the show here. Game, you're hitting on a good point. About games. Some people take game to mean it should be like Pokemon. Not every game's Pokemon. There's a lot of things that are put into games, different types of games. You can have games that address silly things or address serious things. This is a serious topic, and I think games are a great medium for doing that, just like you have movies, books. It's an interactive way of experiencing it. You can't obviously get the whole entire experience, but you're getting a better appreciation for what goes on in these instances, in these situations in combat, from a leadership perspective.
We connect you to the people in the past. One thing I tell us, now, minor as it is, but I'll look at a World War II picture of guys in the snow, and having been put through some of the situations, both photographically and by the writers, the professional writers, from 44 and a winner, I look at them and I sympathize a little bit. And I remember one of the sort of weird things I had. I remember the writers put up a picture of like the supply report, how much ammo and so forth. And I actually was really interested. I've been playing the captain role long enough. I actually like, oh my God, how are the supplies? How do they look? And one of the weirdest stressful situations put me through had to do with gasoline cans. And I just won't spoil anything more, but they do a really good job putting you in there. Even here, this is where I remove all sales from the game. We even have a situation in Naples where you do paperwork. But, we do make it a little more interesting, normal paper. A lot of captaincy is paperwork, so we will put you through some of that. But of course, who really wants to do paperwork? Though there's a big selling game, paperwork, please, digitally. So don't discount anything.
That's awesome.
But it's better than the grunt work, burning the shitters or burying the garbage.
Yeah. Hold on. He's going to put that in, man.
Yeah. Lance Corporal has to go burn the shitters.
Well, just think about
letting the Marines off the hook. So Marines, okay. So what do you think? Should we be doing this or not?
Oh, yeah. This game, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think games and movies and books and all these things should be talked about and created and stuff, because Hollywood makes, Nate brought up something really good before. He says, these things are happening today in combat throughout the world, for the United States and for every country, and they've happened since the dawn of warfare. Hard decisions and bad things happen. War is not a pleasant experience. It's not a pleasant place to be. Nate's a good example of, he can attest to that from his, experiences and how it's affected him. And hey, we got a little baby Gimpy.
She's just visiting for 5 minutes until the wife comes back and grabs her.
Ah, nice.
Sorry.
Well, show her up so everybody can see her. Hi, sweetheart.
Got you down there.
She's like, who's this guy? It's like, well, as someone had posted over here, where was it?
I was just looking at those. Somebody knows their stuff. I see Naples Mafia dock workers. Very good, John.
This one's my favorite one so far.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Matt's saying more on that one.
Nate's hanging out with his drunk uncles. I'm not drunk tonight. Yeah.
Naples was a really interesting wartime city.
Well, I'm happy. I'm really, really, really psyched out now for this game because I wanted realism. Now, you did you coin this permadeath? Is that yours?
No, that's a digital term, meaning your character doesn't come back. It dates back to the old roguelikes like NetHack, if that means anything to you, or they're modern ones. So basically, your character can go 20 hours in the dungeon. You built it up super duper. The dragon breathes on it wrong. You die, and that's it. You don't ever get it back after 20 hours.
Okay.
But those games, people, because it makes you take the decision seriously. Darkest Dungeon did this very heavily in our digital game. So it's a very effective mechanic. It's going to be tricky for us because our game is not, in the digital world, it's what's called procedural. It means every map can be generated. Best analogy would be like rolling dice in the D&D game. I can just roll a new character, right? We have dedicated writers and dedicated situations, and we can't re-roll everything. So at some point, if you get enough of your men, your lieutenants killed, or the game will end. So you can end the whole game. Though we hope maybe it'll be your most memorable experience. But, then you'd have to go back and it would have some similarities and the next time through, and we'll see how variable it is. But it's tricky for us compared to games that just roll everything randomly.
So that sounds to me, sorry to interrupt you, Dan.
Yeah.
That sounds to me very much more like Ambush.
Yes, Ambush would be a good analogy. Because there's a little more ability to randomize stuff, so we can mix it up more than Ambush, but it's a good analogy.
I was kind of hoping though, because I looked, and I'm not trying to call you out on anything, but is there going to be any skirmish mode or possibility for that to just set up some forces so you can have like a little extra replayability to the game after you can play the game?
So let me speak to that. First, go ahead with the hard questions. I'm a big boy, and I'd rather have them now with a friendly crew than, be crying publicly after release. So, work me over. I don't mind. It's kind of fun. Famous last words. Seriously, it's good training for me. Okay. So version 2. So this is official hand waving. BS meter. Hand waving. Version 2, if we get to do it, if version 1 goes first, which is kind of a net. Version 1 is like a classic role-playing game, whether paper, the less dynamic than a true paper role-playing game, but maybe think about some more canned ones, or or Baldur's Gate or Shadowrun Returns. There's a narrative. It's strong. It's like Ambush. It's going to go a certain way. You don't get to pick on which scenarios you go through, etc. But version 2, we would like to make it dynamic. If we get enough sales. Version 1, meaning we will put, like the old Steel Panthers as a digital analogy, which is you roll the map. We would dynamically generate the map. We'd say you are in Sicily right now. You are near Palermo. If we're super cool, we'll use Google Maps and try and rough the map. But that's just a fantasy. We'll roll the map because it's hilly. We'll roll your force pool for the enemy. Your force pool for you will be what you have. But that would be wonderful narratively in the sense that I can ruthlessly kill you because each campaign will be new. So you don't want to make stupid decisions. I can bring the statistics of death up closer to reality because the game will survive that because it'll still be interesting the next time. Now the narrative will become trickier. So to be game designer geeky about it for a moment, and if the narrative is generated by your events, it's called emergent narrative. So squad leader is great at that. Squad leader, right? You roll the dice, the guy goes berserk, he runs across under fire. I remember I played a squad leader a couple years back. Is ridiculous. I was winning it. The guy sends his squad out. I have 4 separate fires on him in the open. Every one of the damn things he made the morale check. He came and he beat me. And have I ever forgotten the game? Here I am telling you the story. That's emergent narrative. Okay, so the version 2 would be very emergent narrative. On the other hand, now you don't get to have professional writers writing the setup story as much, right? Because how can you? We do hope the writers will do sort of snippet, dial, and episode story. And there are board games now, like a board game analogy would be, there's a wonderful one out there about Aladdin. Damn, somebody maybe can type it in the messenger. It's like Aladdin's Tales, paragraph driven.
Yeah,
and the story. I know what you're talking
about. Yeah, it's still emergent, kind of. So, but this one's
tells me the Raven
I don't
Knights.
want to be too much. So we can't. To answer your question concretely, there will not be skirmish mode. There will not be dynamic role. It will not be 2-player. 1 player. It's very hard to do multiplayer digitally. We just cut that out. Feature list. So no. Oh, I love you. Perfect. Yes. All right.
Of course, Dan would have it.
Of course he would. Well done, Dan. Exactly. So we think we can.
Because he goes for the magic carpet ride.
Wait, can you guys still hear me? Because my camera's frozen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Your camera
There's a great digital game out there, Wildermyth, that's coming. That's trying to do a lot of emergent narrative with snippets of story. It's fantasy, but take a look at that one. It's very clever design.
We have a question here from John who's saying, so permadeath, we do have save games, don't we? Will there be save games?
You can beat me. But okay. There's save games, but not reloads. Meaning, the save. Here's the way Darkest Dungeon did it, which is a digital game, and we hope we can imitate it. They are continuously saving. I think. So at any given moment, your state is saved. Therefore, you could say, I want to go to dinner. You save the game, you shut down the computer, and you come back. But the only save game you have, really, is that last state. You can't go back in time. So that's mechanically how you do it. And there are variations of that where you can, if we can't quite be as clever as them, then at key moments we'll save. So you can't get past that death, right? We roll a death to your character, we save it in a way you don't get to. Now, guess what? You're clever, everybody's clever. You can go find the files, you can do sneaky things, somebody will hack it 5 minutes out after it's out. I recognize all that. Our goal is to point the way we want you to play, to mechanically encourage you to play in the spirit of it. And, don't play Burden of Command if you don't want to have permadeath. I mean, how can you do a game in a Burden of Command where there's no burden? So I played, wonderful. Oh my God. What is it? Medal of Honor. Last one. Fantastically executed digital game. I got on there and Beaches Normandy, better than we can ever get close to ever. Jesus, scary, physically. But guess what? You die. Oh, boom, reload. Reload was, I think, 10 to 20 seconds. And I'm back, kicking more ass in a totally non-connection to reality. So there are plenty of games there, and Medal of Honor is a great game, but it's not Burden of Command. So, please don't defeat permadeath. And we are, last thing, and as we're trying to make death interesting. So this is a design principle, which is if you find the experience of it interesting, in learning, interesting is a weird word. If you take it away with you, think of people who have died in movies and so forth, and it's something you always remember and it's meaningful to you. That's what we hope. Maybe You sent the guy up the hill. You sent yourself up the hill. You took the hill. You died, but you're still glad you did it, even though the game ended. And we have a few other tricks, but that's the kind of thing I mean, right? And in fact, I guess I can give this one away. When you die, we will give you a replacement captain, but the lieutenants will remember the prior captain. Now, wouldn't that be interesting? They'll talk about you. Maybe they'll say things
like
about
that.
you didn't say before.
What the hell are you?
Son of a bitch.
How are you going to do that?
You mean mechanically?
Yeah.
Well, basically, the game detects your character's dead, right? Then,
Goes on all your decisions prior to that.
So there's a wonderful engine out there. Okay, so I do want to talk about all the board game traditions because I know we're a board game community. So please shift me with that. And I'm ready here on Fields of Fire, man. And I'm going to Normandy. You heard me there, David. And Storms of Steel. Load. So, I'm not a digital guy. I care about board games. I like both. But anyway, to answer your question, so there's a whole tradition called interactive fiction, which is basically choose your own adventures on screen. And there's one called 80 Days. Am I getting the right one? Christ, I think it's wrong. It's the Sorcerer's one. Go look up Inkle. And they do wonderful, very successful interactive fiction games. They have a scripting engine called Ink. And the writers, Alan and Paul, are from that kind of tradition, and they write in a scripting engine. So they sit there in their writer's engine, and they pop up choose your own adventure. And they can be told, or they can decide you die. When they die, they can pick their next narrative character, which will talk a different way, maybe Southern, maybe he's, Midwestern or Hispanic or whatever. And they can give him different traits. And then suddenly you're him. And then, they're in control of writing. So with writing, you can do anything. I mean, they can make the space aliens land, right? We can't do that easily with the pictures, but the writers could do anything. So I have to trust them, right? So they can bring the next character on by typing. It's a little more clever than that, right? But that's the gist of it. Think of a choose your own adventure where you die, and now you're reborn in paragraph 32, and you're on paragraph 12.
I can't wait for this game. It's going to scare the crap out of me, man. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait.
All right. Can we record that and just, loop thing? Thank you. Thank you. It's a long haul here, so we appreciate the morale boosts.
Well, I mean, here's the question that was supposed to be at the end. And don't give me no...
set up. He set me up for that last one. Okay.
You know what? When it's ready. When it's
released.
Come out.
Hey, we gave a very clear announcement in our first release trailer that it would be ready at the end of 2018. So back off. Okay. I've been trained now. Quick story in that. So I was I have some management experience, but not game production experience. So I was saying, let's put in, release 2018. It was 2017. So of course we'll have it done 2018. Of course. So there are guys who have a little more vet experience on the game side than me. And they say, don't do it. Don't do it. I said, no. Classic young lieutenant. Oh, no. I know what I'm doing here. Back off. So I've still eaten crow for that one. But now the only answer, hey, let's play a little game here. Ask me when it's released. Come on, try me.
That's you, Dad.
When is it released?
Oh, glad you asked. Burden Command will be released when it's done right.
Wow, that's a great answer.
You
kind of saw that one coming almost.
As an artist, you'll never be happy with your product, no matter what.
Yes.
Is that a way of slacking off? Again, here's the slacking off by saying it'll be done when it's going to be done perfect. First of all, it ain't going to be done perfect. You're not.
That's fair. That's fair. So my wife and I have a personal motto, which is really good, which is the perfect is the enemy of the good. And we try to live by that in many ways because I sure as hell know I'm not perfect. In fact, I use that a lot when she calls me on something. Perfect is the enemy of the good. But seriously, yeah. So first, I'm running out of money now. It's all off my own. So we can't go on forever and just doing stuff. Now the project will complete. I can fund my own hours, but I can't keep paying the artists and writers. But luckily we're reaching closure and all those things. So we do have to get out there and have sales to do the next one. Secondly, you can look at the milestones. They're on Steam. And we're knocking them off so you can track the progress. I'll give you the brief version unless you want more. The brief version is narrative's completely done. Now we'll revise it in playtesting, but it's completely done. It's been through a lot of playtesting. The art is essentially all done, meaning the sprites and units and portraits and all that. The tactical aim engine is alpha, meaning you can play the game like a board game right now. We take control of both sides, and the majority of the mechanics are in. There are a few little ones we still want to do, which I could talk about, but basically it's done. And now I'm working on the AI, which of course is hard, and it will never be perfect. It will be hard for it to even be good. But, I hope it will be adequate. And I have background in it, which tells me how hard it will be. So I'm not promising wonderful things. I'm promising I will be realistic about it. And when that's going, then we mostly have a game. We have to tie the scenarios together. So you go from one to the other. And when you're backing a few RPG things around, you gain experience. Think Panzer General, or think leveling up in your favorite role-playing game, or in, gaining, I forget what, it's been a long time since I played Ambush, whatever you game in Ambush, gaining better stats and what we call mindsets, which are a cool concept. Still got to do a little bit of that, but that's not crazy technical work. The last crazy technical work is the AI. So we are getting there, and we'll be able to show you live gameplay when it's done right. Christ,
the end of 2018.
You know what, Luke? You don't look tired enough to me. That means you're taking it easy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, well, I'm a professional manager. I play golf and make sure that everybody's morale is good, meaning I'm getting the big bucks. No, actually, I'm a believer in like Ronald Reagan and so forth. He didn't work crazy hours, or I think there was Jimmy Carter worked too hard, So I hope I didn't offend anybody by any particular remark. I was trying to go both sides. My point is, you got to keep sleep and exercise and so forth for the long haul. I hope I look healthy, because it's part of my responsibility, and I try to make sure the lifestyle for the team is like that. And then most people are working on the team other things, but I'm one thing is I'm persistent. So unless I keel over dead, which is increasingly probable these days,
hopefully not. Hopefully
I will complete this thing.
I think you're right to take your time with it. Sorry, I cut you off, but I look at it like Uva does with his stuff. He might take a little while to release one of his games, but when it releases, it's damn near perfect.
And he gets a lot of grief, So, but the product's great. The Conflict of Heroes board game.
3rd edition Conflict of Heroes is just freaking outstanding. I've been loving on it a lot.
Can I complain about Conflict of Heroes for a moment? My son, who's 11, is beating me in Conflict of Heroes, so it pisses me off. I don't like the game anymore because he's flattened my squads.
Now we need to bring Uva in, so that way we can say, "Hey, Uva, your game's broke because this kid keeps kicking your ass."
And he did a great AI in his solo expansion, by the way, which. Yep. I'm deliberately not eyeing right now, but I'll go back and compare later to see if I can learn a few tricks, because we all steal on game design, but it's well done.
And it is very well done.
I did have one question that it hasn't been touched on yet. I'm surprised it's not been touched on by Dan. Music in the game. Is there plans to have music in the game?
Oh,
what was that, Dan?
Please. What
was that, Dan?
I said I was getting there. I was just.
Okay. No, because the reason why I was asking
on music, we have
what I was going to ask you on music is this. Now, obviously, I figured there's going to be music in the game, but you were talking about how it's such a heavy game, and you want to be brought into the aspect of command and the dread of the situation that you're in. Is the music going to be stirring, or is it going to be
oh my God,
building that sense of dread?
So thrilled. Hey, you guys got an exclusive tonight. This is the first time anybody's asked us about music, and I actually have quite a bit to say on it. Chris Scribner, shout out for Chris Scribner. He's a composer. He's our composer. Chris, you owe me now, man. Virtual beer later tonight, please. And Chris has been like crazy composing for us on all kinds of fronts. And you can go hear his music right now. We have a series on YouTube. It's a historical series about cotton balers. All the music on there is composed by him. There are one or two there by some prior wonderful Polish group did some work for us, but the rest is him. We've had a lot of explicit comments. The music's amazing, and I think it is. Of course, I'm totally biased. So now let me say something specific about the music. So our core inspiration's Band of Brothers for the music. Okay, but we have had conscious conversations about the design of the music. What's the design of the music? The design of the music is burden of command. So what is burden of command in a nutshell? It is men versus mission. That is my short of what burden of command means. You are always in the tension of, do I send them up the hill? Is this the hill I send them up? You may remember Band of Brothers, Dick Winters at the canal. He sent him over, grabbed the prisoner, brings him back. His fire up says, "Great job, send him over again." And Dick Winters, and he did do this, didn't, instead he did. And that was the right decision. I think most of us probably feel that late in the war. You could argue maybe not, but probably. In any case, he chose the men over the mission that time, right? So we did the same thing in the music. So we have consciously sat there. This is where Chris is amazing. Talked about this, and he has designed a men theme and a mission theme and the conflict between them. And then we have themes around, uplifting moments and the battle and down and so forth, but very conscious. And then the other thing that's going on, I haven't heard the parts for this yet. This isn't in, so this is now back to hand waving. The rest is done. You can hear it. We're working with the writers. We hope that we will have specific little motifs, little themes for the different lieutenants. He's already worked on one or two of them, so there's really no reason we shouldn't, but it's not there yet, so I don't want to overpromise. And we're hoping in that, remember I was talking about that ink scripting language? We're hoping that the writer can just say sad to be so silly about it, or angry or frustrated or, battlefield noises. And then he'll play that in the background while you're doing the choose your own adventure. Now, will we get to that or not? I think we probably will, because that's not hard technically, right? That's just say play that piece of
trigger,
music. Hard is composing, and then the writers do have to go in and tag it. So I expect we will. We don't yet, but we have thought very hard and consciously about the music, and rather than just try and do nice music, this music is very specifically designed. Oh, and last detail: no music on the battlefield. Okay,
well, that was one of the things I was going to ask you.
Brothers.
Is it going to be just, on the battlefield? Is it going to be music, or is it going to be just atmosphere?
Music feels wrong to us for the same reason Band of Brothers decided not to. Now, there are slight exceptions, and Band of Brothers has slight exceptions. The battle's ebbed, and you're trying to make an emotional point, and they're standing over the dead or the victory or whatever the emotional moment is. They'll put some music, and we'll do the same. But the gist of it is when the battle starts, there's no music, because, there's no music during battle. It's a pretty serious thing. And somebody asked me about sound effects for music, because we're hoping to do some cool crap there. But board games, for God's sake.
Wait.
Mo, get control of this crap.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead, Dan. I'm gonna let that, and then we're gonna get to some questions from the audience after Dan's question.
Okay, you have a section. You have something in the game that gives you a percentile of what's your percentage that you're gonna kill that guy. Right? Is there any way to remove that? Because in real war, you don't know what the percentage is. Your gun can jam.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Great, God, you got great questions. Okay, so there are a few. You can see a few YouTube videos on this. So we've been thinking about this, and we have deliberately moved away. So XCOM on our digital game, you get the percentage. Of course, in any board game, 2 dice 6. Look at the column, you know what's going to happen, right? If you roll, right? In fact, you game it. So I'll use my +3 leader, and I'll go to this column. That just 1 point moves me to the column, and now we all know that drill. So real wars, you say, is not like that. So what we're doing is we are deliberately introducing fog of war into the numbers. So when you look at enemy morale now, it is fog of war, meaning you have an approximation of the enemy morale. You don't know what it is. Your unit. We do keep it exact for your men because it just gets too tricky to manage. But so your morale, your squad.
You're gonna know your guys anyway, yeah.
We have to make some compromise. It is a game in that sense. But the enemy, it's approximated. Okay. Similarly, the percentages to hit. Well, the default design will be you will see a little sort of like dial percent chance, like you might see in a nice bar chart. It's 75%. You can't read the number, but you can get the gist. You could, if you want to think hard about it, you could figure it out as 72. But who would? And we'll probably put an option for people who really want the numbers. They can pick numbers, but that will not be the default design. The intention, and I think we approximate the probability. So if the probability is this is in right now.
Should be red, orange, green.
6 exactly. Thank you. Yeah. It's basically stoplight with a little variation. So all you know is that it's yellow. You don't know it's 62%. So in fact, actually, you can't even infer the exact number.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Because that's where Combat Commander is awesome.
Fantastic game.
When you have no dice, so when you draw the card and it says sniper, it's like you just got nailed in the head, and it's like it screws up your plan completely.
Combat Commander was a deep inspiration. I want to talk about a board game. Damn it! So Combat Commander is a great choice. Chad, God rest his soul. fantastic designer. It makes me, really, I see his game when I get up because it's over in the shelves. It makes me sad seeing the game every day. In case some viewers don't know, he passed this year, or I guess can't remember if it was this year or last year, very recently. And our test scenario is Fat Lipke, the first scenario in just for our practicing things, the Russian front, from his first design. Yep. Oh my God, what a brilliant design. Now, you can not like the design certain ways for good reasons, right? Like, why can't I do this because I don't have the card? That's very fair. And I'm assuming the crowd mostly here right now knows it since this audience, so I'm not going to explain too many things. Card draw, you might not pull all the action you need. But you can also make a counter argument. You can't always do what you want. It's sort of representing chaos. It's fantastic on chaos. And I have an image up here. I think I can cheat today. I can't normally put this online. So I'm going to give you guys an exclusive because I'm using some images I really can't use.
We like exclusives.
Yeah. So let me see if I can get this on camera. Hold on. All right. This is my core design document. So, I'm cheating using Band of Brothers because, of course, that inspires me. Let me see if I can get it right. All right. Now, what's the big word in orange at the top?
Chaos.
Chaos. The battlefield's chaos. So I'm always sitting there and thinking, how can I make the battlefield chaotic? How can the men not follow orders? I love human chaos in particular. I don't have gun jams yet, but I hope I will. But there's a lot of human chaos already. We can talk about it if you want. A lot of equivalents of Chad card draws, and late in the process, I'll be adding more. So that's very important. And of course, you don't succeed as well as you thought on the shooting. The artillery scatters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, let's hit some of these questions here from the audience. John has one. He says, the only thing that I think would be problematic is sometimes, say, in Darkest Dungeons, is when you roll up a scenario at random that makes it randomly impossible and you get totally wiped. So that would be one of the drawbacks to having that, generated, randomly generated situation as you were talking about going forward.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. And there's, game designers sweat that. And there's no great answer to that. There are tricks. One way I'd answer it is decide why you're playing that kind of game. And it might not be you're playing the game to win per se. You're playing the game to have a certain kind of experience. So one reason people play roguelikes, of course they want to win and they want to beat Dark Dungeon. But sometimes, you just will never forget that crazy wipe when everybody in the party died, in a ridiculous way, because that's, Darkest Dungeon is a very psychology-oriented game, digital games, where they said, actually, Darkest Dungeon is something of an inspiration. The designer there himself has said he was influenced by Squad Leader. He gave a talk at GDC and he put Squad Leader up for Chaos. In Darkest Dungeon, they said, hey, you know what? It probably sucks going into a dungeon, and you probably get stressed to hell from going in a dungeon. You develop mental issues from going in a dungeon. It's bad. So you might have a wipe because your lead fighter freaks out, and does the wrong thing. Gee, that sounds like combat. And then everybody in the back row gets killed. So if you're playing, who wants to lose, really? But if you're playing for experience, that mindset, that might be okay. As long as the reload is instantly an interesting game. Again, it still sucks off characters. Now in ours, a reload of the whole campaign would be a little dicey. So that's why I go back to it's like a Baldur's Gate or a Shadowrun Returns, or pick your favorite, RPG. So I can only say the commenter is correct. It's sort of intrinsic. There are some other tricks. So the XCOM designers cheat. They gradually shift the probabilities in your favor. Many of the AAA titles and others do. I hope I'm not misquoting. I think they've been direct about that. If not them, some others do. And basically, they're trying to make sure people are really weird about probability, right? Like probabilistically, you will roll 6 ones in a row. That will happen to you, or whatever the examples are. But people freak out and think the whole engine's broken. So they will actually intercept. Another rolling another one. We can't do that. People won't understand. They'll think it's not a fair game, and so they actually make the game not true to make you think it is true. So there's lots of design issues around that one.
The Evolving Warfighter asks, or he makes a comment here, I can tell you the military community is excited to play this game. While most will jump at this game for the entertainment value, there will be a wonderful tool for military leader development. That was a question I was going to ask later was, do you have any contacts with DoD where you can try to work with the military, here in the United States as well as other countries as a tool for NCOs and officers?
Thank you, Evolving Warfighter. So I'm going to plug him because he deserves to be plugged. He was a medic in the services, and he does a very interesting channel on Evolving Warfare. I first noticed him. He was doing on World War Storms of Steel, which is a remarkable account by a German first, I forget what level he starts, sergeant, whenever he becomes lieutenant and then captain, but remarkable story of sort of a guy who was incredibly good at, he was a winner as kind of a Germany World War One. Anyway, he did a great episode in that, and that made me read Storms of Steel. And I do fault him for adding things to my stack of shame for reading. So he is at fault there. But anyway, he's a contact of sorts. And I have had feelers from the Marines and from West Point and a few more. Back in the day when I worked for a big consulting firm, the Department of Defense is not known for nimble execution on large projects. So nimble on the battlefield, maybe a little trickier with projects. So if I do that, well, I want to do that. And that will be a long process to do after the first release. So I hope they'll be interested. The nice thing about the engine is indifferent to the choose your own adventure moments, right? So they have certain things they want to teach. They want to put it in a certain way. They want to make certain points about logistics or whatever the hell. The engine doesn't care. It's just putting text in and choices and picking effects from it. So within limits, it can be as doctrinaire or whatever they think is appropriate. Now, the combat model, we believe, we've had some advice, for instance, Eric Villard, who's a digital military historian, who's a contact, wonderful Twitter channel and Facebook on pictures from Vietnam, World War II, World War I. Check him out. He's helped us a little bit on photo editing advice, but I also talked to him. He says our combat model from World War II probably applies into World War I, especially, stormtroopers and so forth, and probably up as far as the Vietnam War. Obviously you have to change things. It probably starts to break down seriously when you get into the 80s, GPS, things like that, So, but that gives us quite a province of things to touch. And again, within limits, we could still do some fairly modern things. So if you think that World War II or up into the 70s is something to teach modern commanders, then maybe. And we also are followed by the company leader, if I've got his name on Twitter correctly, and a couple other military leaders. And we have majors and sergeants and captains and lieutenants from most of the services involved in the project. No general yet, except, my God, we do have the head of the Belgian army is a follower. So he hasn't deigned to give us lots of advice yet, but that was pretty cool, I must say.
Nate, why don't you take Findle's 70s question?
Sorry if it was already mentioned, but how do you actually keep track of your progress in an RPG sense? Do you get specific rewards per mission or supply points, etc.?
Thank you. Excellent. So that's part that we have. There's a dev blog on the website that details in some. Alan, one of the writers, had a wonderful idea, which is to articulate. So let me start simple and then go a little more complicated. So we're a light RPG. So we're not full featured, not huge skill trees, etc. We do light versions of this. So think Panzer General for core attributes. I mean, what's cool. Panzer General, the digital game, is an RPG. It's just an RPG around your units. They gain experience, you upgrade them, it becomes a Tiger, etc. So your lieutenants gain experience, which is sort of combat expertise, which, as you might hope, makes them better at particular things like fire, guidance, and so forth. They also gain trust, which is an unusual trait. And trust influences, do the men trust them that they give a damn about their lives, right? And therefore, it improves morale checks. So you want the men to cross the field under fire. You have high trust, probability goes up. The units themselves have some experience, but it's sort of a marker for just them overall. They're a little simplified since our focus is the leaders. So experience, trust, those are the core. Now, I think the subtle skill tree one that's really interesting is these things called mindsets. What's a mindset? Doctrinaire, right? I may have the names wrong. Forgive me, Alan, but they're not implemented yet, but they are first pass design. Doctrinaire might say, let me think of a better one. Something like zealous. That's a good one. Spears from Band of Brothers. I think we can all agree was zealous.
Slightly. He was motivated. We call that motivated in the Corps.
Motivated. Hard charger.
So, exactly. What we'll do with that is a zealous character. If you pick the mindset, you will have what we call crucibles. Those are critical moments when you have to make decisions. And we hope as captain, you actually advise your lieutenants in their crucibles. Writers have done some of that. But you have your own crucibles. Critical moments. What kind of person are you going to be in this situation? Are you going to be a zealous person? Are you cautious? Cautious isn't a bad choice for real life combat. And the men might appreciate you being cautious more than zealous. So, but if you're zealous, maybe you're really good at assaults, but you tend to have higher casualties. So maybe your trust isn't as high. I don't know, right? We'll figure these things out as we go, but you can go look at the dev blog. We have a example set of them, which we intend to do. And you will follow. And we did Spear's journey in the dev blog, what we believe was Spear's mindset journey and across all the things that happened in history. And we hope at the end of the campaign, you will have your mindset journey, which is a sort of spiritual summary of what you went through. And I say spiritual deliberately. So there's a fantastic book out there called What It's Like to Go to War, which is by a Vietnam vet, an amazing guy who he was on the PBS Vietnam series repeatedly. God, I'm blanking on his name for a moment. It's horrible. I'm probably getting a little tired. It'll come to me. But anyway, he was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. He had a cushy in the Vietnam War, and the guy resigned from cushy world and volunteered to go be a lieutenant in Vietnam. How many people did that, especially in that situation? So he went in there. He was pretty effective. Apparently, he wrote a book on it. And his point is that war is inherently spiritual. And he calls it the Temple of Mars. Now, he doesn't mean it's a nice place. It might be hell. And you make a good argument for its hell. Though often you see some of the best behavior between people, arguably in war too, as well as the worst. But it is spiritual, because what is more spiritual than life and death, right? When you are in the presence of death, you are in the spiritual world. One of his points is often the army, you can agree or not, it's his point, but may not be preparing our young soldiers well enough. They prepare them well for combat. Are they preparing them well enough for the spiritual effects of death, for the friend having his head blown up next to them, right? Are they being prepared for that?
How can you prepare someone?
Well, you can't, but there are some things you can do, right? So you can, well, I won't speak because who am I to speak, but he speaks on it. Read his book. It's superb. He also gave a great, fantastic hour-long lecture summarizing it at the Pritzner Military Library. So go watch that for $2. It's really good. And I brought that up because the mindsets are an attempt to articulate your sort of spiritual journey and in some sense just psychological journey as a leader, which we think is in some sense the most interesting. So I'm really excited when we get to that. So some light RPG attributes. This mindset tree, we won't have enough time and capacity to do a lot of variety. And we're a small team. We're really about 3 or 4 people. Go to our website. Got a lot of people, but a lot of people are doing 2 or 3 hours a week in their part-time. Effectively, we're like 3 or 4 people across everything.
Yeah, but it doesn't take a whole lot of people to make an excellent game either, though.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the biggest selling games were made by 1 or 2 people. It just takes that innovative idea to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I would fault us for overambition, though. We're doing interactive fiction. We're doing the tactical engine, which I want to be good because, I admire the squad leaders. And I want to mention the Fields of Fire. I've talked to Ben Hull, an influence. Conflict of Heroes, of course, Lock and Load, Combat Commander, more squad leader, of course. I want it. Damn it. I like those games. I want the battlefield to be at least credible on that. I hope good. And I have some different things I believe about that because anybody doing it does. So we're doing that. And we're doing the RPG side. So you could fault us for overambition, but
Well, just don't go down the Star Citizen route. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, give me $1 million. Let me try, please. Or
perpetual development.
Whatever it was. I don't mind trying.
Perpetual development forever and ever and ever in a game that
we are knocking the milestones off. So it's going to happen. And I can't say more than that because I'll be shot by the team, but we're getting there.
I would rather you take your time and deliver a 10 than try to rush it and deliver a 7.
Yes.
I will ask that you not set that expectation. I will ask that you hope we deliver a unique, good game. And the reason I say that is it's hard to figure out what a leadership game RPG is. We don't know. We're still figuring it out. If we were starting again, we would write it a different way than we write it now. By the, scenario 18, we were writing very different things than we were writing scenario 1. We did go back and revise, actually. But the gist of it is we understood what the burden of command was much better deep in the process than we did at the beginning. And so our next one will be much better and so on. So I hope that people will be forgiving. It still needs to be a good game, but they'll say this is opening a door that has not been opened before. And the way we started the conversation, and that's the way they'll look at it and forgive us the rough edges, which are inevitable.
Well, that's the burden of development.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Remember,
I mean, a little play on words, but it's true. You evolve with the project.
And it
Yeah,
became, designer, it's always inadequate compared to what we hope. But we hope you'll like
you
it.
see the rough edges that
Okay.
others don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
What I wish I could do.
hobby. Yeah, and I'll see flaws in my work that if I show it to someone else, they're like, "Oh wow, that looks really good."
Yeah.
And all
Yeah,
I
we
see
all
is
know
the
that.
dings.
Our own worst critic. That's why the playtesters are key. And we've been very privileged. We have now about 500 people volunteered to playtest, which are not playtesting right now, but we have that in the sort of
3 years ago.
So that's incredibly lucky. But again, I think people are excited by the topic, so that gives us a good chance to get the feedback we need, which is vital.
It's actually
Dan,
good
why don't
timing.
you take Dave's question there?
Oh, good. Hey, Dave.
Dave,
Super cool designer.
who is that guy?
Some guy, he just jumped in the chat. See if he can.
What's that weird scuba equipment he's always wearing, man? And speaking in Italian, what's going on?
So this guy says, Luke, since you're a board war gamer, can you talk to us about the strengths and weaknesses of board?
Thank you, Dave. I really, that's one of the pleasures for me, the crossover. It's a really interesting question. I think about a lot. I would say, and the designer of Civilization 4, the digital, gave a great talk on this. You can find on GDC, which is Game Designer Conference, GDC, talks on YouTube. Anyway, on what is called transparency. Board games are fantastic at transparency, meaning the mechanics are there because the game won't run. If you don't know the mechanics, you stare at the map and you don't know what the rules are, you're not going to play that game. So you know the mechanics. So it's very transparent. It also puts a wonderful design limit on the designer. If it's a good game, you can't make it too complex. I mean, especially these days for all of us. But so therefore, and Dave's a master of, Dave, I want to pay later, of lean design, So
He's also the master of finding really weird things or unique things to cover.
Well, he picks. I think I really resonate to what he does because he picks these extremely human situations. I mean, 3 guys going into a British harbor on very questionable, new tech Italian. I'm referring
torpedoes.
His sea torpedo game, stealth. What's it called? Give me the stealth.
By Stealth and Sea.
Thank you. I mean, God, you got to feel for those guys. Christ. Or Pavlov's house on the Russian front, or, Castle Itter. These are very human situations. So I love the way he comes at it. Anyway, the cardboard is fantastic for transparency. And digital often suffers from, why the hell did I just die there? Or why am I unable to beat this thing? Because you don't understand flanking was a critical mechanic to pull off there. So tricky, and people don't read rule books anymore. The days of reading rule books, manuals for digital are gone.
What's a rule book?
Yeah,
for a video game, just start playing.
So transparency, we can learn from. So this is a design topic. For instance, we had a lot of debate on the interactive fiction early on, the choose your own adventure. Ooh, I'm not supposed to use that word. They'll sue me. Okay, the choices thing. Are you transparent or not? So the interactive fiction people worry about this a lot. Meaning, do you tell them if they pick this choice, it will be -2 trust? Or do you not? And they have to wonder. And there are good arguments for both, right? Good argument is, hey, don't tell them that. How would you know? Right? The other argument is, well, let them know, because then they can make, more, they can understand the tension. And I erred on the transparency side from the board game design background. And one reason is, when we put up a choice for you, I can't give you the facial expressions of the people you're dealing with. I can't put you on the battlefield in 1944 in an environment the real leader was. So therefore, I have to cheat a bit to help you along in what this means.
Sure.
Plus, I think it just helps. So I err, but you could go on the other way. So transparency. Next thing is, I think the board game tradition is fantastic for its creativity in the following sense. Experiments are cheaper. Now, they're probably not in the blood each of the designers pays, right? They put so many hours into it out of love for their designs. And they don't get paid commiserate with their effort. I've designed a board game on World War II, so I'm pretty aware of the effort. That'll be something I hope gets out after this. But anyway, cardboard is not as expensive to produce. It's still expensive. We pay for it, but it's nothing like, digital.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't want to talk about it. So anyway, more experiments to maybe wrongly use a Chinese communist metaphor, let 1,000 blossoms bloom, or whatever Mal said. Not that I'm like Mal, but my point is, you can have many more creative experiments. We can have Fields of Fire. We can have Conflicts of Heroes. We can have Warfighter. We can have Lock and Load. on and on and on. Name your favorite one. 100 yards. Interesting design came out since we started working that are exploring different aspects of the battlefield and tactics and so forth, and have different things to say. The great Space Rumfield, as he goes on Twitter, who does a wonderful podcast.
Bruce Garrick.
Bruce Garrick.
Yeah.
Bruce Garrick, hardcore wargamer. I think Bruce would be pleased. I said hardcore wargamer. Anyway, he says that each board game is a thesis, right? That it's an articulation of a certain view, one person's opinion of what the mechanics are. 100 yards is a good example of that. Clearly, Combat Commander is the thing on that. So the range of digital efforts on tactical fighting, limited. If we're talking sort of the more sober, tactical, turn-based, though you can point to Brothers in Arms, for instance, on the sort of more real-time. And there's some others you could point to. But on the sort of more board game-esque ones, there are not too many. Steel Panthers, Lock and Load. Digital is actually coming out next week, I think.
Yep.
Conversion of the board game.
I actually did the tutorial for that.
Did you? Oh, really?
Yeah.
You mean for the digital?
Yeah, for the digital edition, I did the little videos.
Fantastic. I was really irritated. It didn't come out last week.
So you need to talk to Nate when you want some digital tutorials
Nate.
done.
Yeah. Okay. You tell me which ones to try. I'm going to be getting that. Was one or two more. There's a John Tiller's one on squad combat. There are a few more you could point to, but we're going to run out quickly under 10 copies. Right? There are tons on the tactical. So board games allow a great exploration of the space of design, which allows us to learn things. So I get to cheat, right? I get to take the idea of chaos of the battlefield because Combat Commander and Chad taught me that, right? I get to take the emergent story of Squad Leader because Squad Leader taught me that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I get to take Fields of Fire, which is a heavy influence in terms of command points for the leaders and limited decisions. So, of course, I could just make a big stirred mess. I think that's the risk. Nonetheless, they give me the language, the Lego, the alphabet to think about the problem, which is a lot better than not having it. So on the other hand, I'll say now, having lauded board games, I think the weakness I see from having designed one inspired by them, and I'd love to hear you guys think ones you think overcomes this. And I believe Conflict of Heroes is going to try this. Fog of War. I think that is what is striking me as the most central weakness of a tactical board game design compared to digital. Now, Dirk Kennemeyer, I'm going to get his name wrong. He did a what was it called? A board game that they did a really clever. They gave each side of it's a tactical board game. I could go find it. Damn it! It's something like it's the Allied and the Soviet sides, and each player gets a different rule book, and with a different description of what the victory conditions are. I think Conflict of Heroes is going this way. Do you remember it yet? I feel very
that sounds very familiar, but you don't know. I have, I'm the U.S. I have different objectives than you,
and it's
sort
blocks,
of thing. Yeah,
right. Yeah. And there's Combat Infantry came out, right?
Combat Infantry
is good on that, and he gives you a different manual, so you don't even know what the other side's fighting for. But generally, digital is a lot easier, right? So when the moment in Burden of Command we put in Fog of War, which is in there now, and all the enemy units vanish from the map, and you're out there with your men, and you are getting it diced and sliced if you cross an open field and there's a machine gun on the other side, and it is bad when you do that. Like, the one I almost didn't mention, Band of Brothers board game, which is, I think, one of the most credible models of tactical on the board game side. They slice and dice you if you run out in the open under machine gun fire. I do the same. I mean, instantly you're like, holy crap, I don't know if I want to cross that field. Instantly the game changes radically. Plus, we penalize high surprise. So you get surprised by a unit, you take a penalty because men are not expecting to be shot out of the blue, right? And they're probably going to take casualties because they're standing upright walking, which is really not the right thing to do when you get shot at, et cetera.
Hey,
so I can go on. Those are core differences.
Dan, you want to take Hethwell's question there?
Luke, one of the development vlogs is about civilians.
Hey, Hethwell, I recognize you. Go ahead. Sorry.
I remember is the French during the torch landings. A unit history is not always about the fight. Can expect more on that out of the battle.
Thank you. Who asked that?
Hethwell,
thank you so much. I think that was slightly planned. He knows stuff we do, so I appreciate it. So what we say about Burden of Command is you must lead on and off the battlefield. So let me talk about it. We put a lot of effort into the non-battlefield. One of the most pleasing comments when we first released was we had a woman online saying, I would never consider a game like this normally, but looking at this one, I might. which was really, hopeful. So what do we do? Give you examples of that. For instance, Naples. Naples, very interesting wartime city. You can choose to go into Naples and have things that are strictly not tactical happen to you in Naples. Use your imagination here. And by the way, so there's a really interesting work been done on 400,000 gamers. If you go into our playtester survey, you can take it. There's a link there, or just tweet me and I'll give you the link. And you can find out what kind of gamer you are based on 400,000 others. This is digital gamers, but they've done a board game version now too. And my point is, people are different gamers. So for instance, some people are what's called immersion gamers. Immersion gamers are there for the experience. Like they might play a role-playing game, quick story and immersion, and then this will get back to the question. So I'm playing D&D once at a conference. So I'm kind of what's called a mastery player. I want to win, right? So I want to min-max and beat the game. But this guy, he was an actor actually in his spare time. So we're sitting here. How are we going to go through that door? How are we going to, really optimize a kill when we think the goblins or whatever they were in there? The guy playing a drunk guy, he just opens the door, runs in. We're like, what the hell did you just do?
Leroy Jenkins.
I've never forgotten it. Oh my God, it was a great. And Jesus, what are you doing? We all had to everything went total chaos. It's fantastic. I would never probably do that. He did. If he was an immersion player, he didn't care if he got killed. He wanted a good story. So immersion players, we're happy to say a good percentage of the people, because we asked our playtesters, to do the survey, are immersion players. So for the immersion players, you can go into Naples and have things that are a lot of text and a lot of choices and never involve combat, but are credible about what happened to officers and enlisted and so forth in those situations. But we do try to recognize a lot of people aren't that way, and you can bypass them. And there's a lot more on that. Politics with the superiors, issues with the enlisted men. You'll meet the Vichy French, but you also meet the historic Free French. You also meet the historic French resistance. And we try to stay accurate about it, picking historic wherever we can. And a lot of those issues are not. Like I told you, one of the worst ones that stressed me the most, I was sitting there sweating through it, was all about gasoline, and there was no combat involved. So there's a lot of that. And I should warn you, if you just want a tactical game, then don't play the game. Don't pick it. Please don't give us a bad review because you wanted, pure tactical game. We are a leadership RPG. You will recognize a battlefield as relating to your favorite tactical game, but we are a leadership RPG.
I can't wait.
It's like a little kid.
I'm freaking out.
Well, we'll never live up to all the wonderful fantasies we're creating here with Band of Brothers and so forth, but we will point in their direction, then use your imagination.
I think that's going to be one of your bigger issues that you're going to have is the people that look at the screenshots and they don't look past that and they expect, turn-based Panzer General or something, and then they're thrown off like, what the hell? What am I making a choice? What is this? And it's going to throw them off and they'll leave you bad reviews over it.
I'm going to give you another exclusive. So I hope to do this video. So one of the release videos I hope to do is, I think it'll be effective. The release video will be, don't buy this game. That will be the open of the release. He'll say, don't buy this game because, permadeath, because Burden Command. But, and then we'll say what the positive is. There's a funny marketing story once I learned. Apparently the most effective quick marketing message ever was something like, what was it for building trust? It was
boobs.
Yeah, well, that's I'm not touching that one. Okay.
Why not?
This perfume, I forget which one it is. Sure, we're expensive, but you're worth it. And that's apparently one of the most effective marketing lines ever, because the first thing they led with was their weakness. It was an expensive perfume, but they instantly told you why you might want to spend the money. And so we'll try to do that in an honest way, but funny, which is we'll tell you why you shouldn't buy this game, because we will have RNG, as the digital people call it, which is dice rolling. You will get screwed by the dice, and we try to handle, but you will get screwed by the dice. So don't play this game if you hate RNG. But if you believe the battlefield should be chaotic, like Combat Commander, makes sense. Some people don't like the chaos of Combat Commander. We're not your game, right? If you want to be able to reload, this is not your game. So we'll try to make those points because we don't want the bad reviews. We want the people who it's a match for.
Oh, so no save scumming on this?
Oh, I'm sure somebody will figure it out, but we're not going to give it.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Nate, let's take Matt's question.
It tastes bad, but it works.
Matt wanted to know, I wonder if simulating the psychology of difficult decisions can really be done in a game. There is no consequence beyond the game to choose anything other than best chance to complete the objective.
Okay, that's a great question. Who knows the answer to that? I think a couple of answers that, if I understood the question, maybe Matt will follow up if I didn't, is this war of mine, right? Back to the example of the civilian, I mean, Jesus, can you put in a game the civilian experience of being in Sarajevo? Of course, one answer is no, you absolutely cannot. On the other hand, can you point at it? Yes, you can point at it. I know that after I played the game and I would see pictures of people in, Syria and so forth, I had a different, at least, thought about it. So it connected me more. I have to be very careful how much you say. I'm reassured by the fact that vets have stayed on the team, including the combat vets, right? So they think it can be pointed to in some fashion, and they want it pointed to in some fashion. So limits. Also, what are you optimizing? So we are not our goal for winning scenarios is not winning scenarios. It's men versus mission. So who are you as a leader? Do you want to be the guy who rose quickly in the ranks by kicking it like, the way Patton be happy for you? If that's appropriate about Patton, that's probably a subject of debate. Maybe that's fair because, if you win the scenarios and take the hills, fewer people might die in World War II insofar as you can contribute, right? So that's a moral position to take. I might be known as a butcher, but the war ended quicker because there were enough butchers. On the other hand, you might be, I have some local responsibility to my men, and maybe I'm going to be winners and not go over the canal again in this case. And so we will try to measure, you will decide, we hope to some extent, what it is for you to win, right? So games like Crusader Kings 2 don't tell you the victory conditions. They're what's called sandboxes. And there are some, board game examples of that. You decide what to win. Now we'll give you some measures, right? The higher ups would like you to take the hill, and they're not as concerned about casualties. You can tell me I'm wrong, but that's probably some truth to that. Conversely, the men would probably prefer not to die for that hill for you, with exceptions. And so who are you trying to please? And Sergeant Grant will be there as the voice of the men, trying to remind you you have some responsibilities there. And the superiors will certainly be reminding you have some responsibilities there. And so my answer to you is, if you know what the right choice is, I don't know what the right choice in those is, and I always wonder what would have been my choices in those situations. And we hope we'll get you to think. So I hope I've outlined ways that choices, and I'll pick the one that wins the mission, because I don't know what winning burden of command is in a simple sense. I do know some ways to lose.
Now, what about a choice or the option of historical monuments?
Explain that one. What?
I'm thinking of Monte Cassino.
Oh, that's what I was just thinking of.
Yeah. What about? Oh, that's a great one. Yes. So now we don't go to Monte Cassino. We follow the cotton balers. They go, by the way, Morocco, Sicily, southern Italy, and then southern France and Germany. So they do some very unusual battlefields. We don't go to Normandy. Okay. We do a lot of that kind of stuff. So let me talk, since you asked the kind of question. My father was an historian and of some eminence, and because I'm proud of my dad, so I'm going to brag about him for a moment. He was actually a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. He found a field called History of Technology. He didn't win the Pulitzer Prize, I want to be accurate, but he was very close. And we talked about that once. Back in the day, I grew up in the Cold War, that when you thought nuclear annihilation, we almost wrote an article in the New York Times once. Basically, he wanted to write an article that just was, we're always sitting here about all of us dying. What about all the dead lives implicit in those buildings? When the bomb drops and all the work of the past is eradicated, you're basically killing the last remnants of those past people's lives. So my point here is, one burden is the past. Actually, nobody's ever brought that up. So I compliment you. Nobody's ever brought up the monument issue. Casino, so for those who may not know, Casino was I'm not quite sure, a medieval monastery.
1,000 years old.
Right. And the Allies decided to bomb it. You can make some good arguments for why they did it. It was probably the wrong decision in hindsight. The Germans weren't actually in it. They thought the Germans were, and the Germans then got into it. But leaving aside whether it's true or not, the point was it was a tricky decision to make, and the burden there was history. And very unusual burden. We try to hit those. So what are other burdens? Burdens besides your men in the mission are civilians. I gave you that example with the Sicily example. Another one is the enemy. So I don't want to give away too much from the real history, but mostly, you want to kill the enemy for obvious reasons. right? And that's arguably ethical, right? Or why are you out there? So on the other hand, should you gratuitously slaughter them when given the chance? We feel there's some limits. So trust me, we will put you in situations where you're balancing burdens around them. And then I don't know if we did the monument one, crikey, God, I'm bringing on Paul. We should have. So yeah, that would be the kind of thing we'd like to do, right? Germans, I can tell you this is an ugly story. There's a great trilogy out there, Atkinson's Liberation Trilogy. Bastards put, I think it was just Naples, they put bombs everywhere. They deliberately blew up one of the great old libraries there. Then they put bombs everywhere to slow down actions. But of course, guess how the bombs took off? They were on timers. So guess who got blown up by the timers? Jesus, a long line of orphans. It would be in a book, except it's not. It was the orphans in line or something horrible like that. The worst possible people are blown up by their bomb. So, the children. So it's very, very tricky. But sometimes you might need to bomb the town and so forth. So yes. But I have never had the monuments one brought up, and it's a great one.
And David has one here. He has another comment.
Hold on. I have a window going crazy. Just a second.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
It was your window was open, and I was hearing the aircraft flying around out there.
Yeah.
Sorry, and starting to rattle from the wind. Go ahead.
Said, I'm proud to be a member of the Burden of Command community, and I appreciate all the love that Luke gives back to the board game world. David wants to know, what can we do to help support Burden of Command until it releases?
Seriously.
Thank you. Seriously, you can. Well, I think you know the answer, but the answer is spread the word, and in particular, spread the word in the right kind of way. Which is, this is not, be honest about the nature of the game. And then that, put it this way, support this game because it's taking risks. Yeah. That's the way I'd like you to put it. Meaning, I want them to come to the game prepared to cut us some breaks because, we're the first people we think, except, can argue ambush to some degree, clearly, doing this kind of thing. So we're going to get things wrong. And also, my God, what are people's expectations? We're dealing with death, and Band of Brothers is an example. We're just going to manage two things: spread the word, manage expectations, and point them to that we are drawing richly, we believe, from the board game tradition. And I can go through specific mechanics that I've drawn from, as well as from digital. So they should be interested as board game people while feeling free not to like some of our approaches, like Combat Commander. So spread the word, please. And also, we're indie. And let me tell you guys, it's true in the board game world too, though still not, I think, quite as brutally as digital. Digital is something like 3,000 games a month now coming out digitally. It might be higher than that.
Seriously.
It's crazy. If I'd come out...
A lot on the phones too, right?
Yeah, if I'd come out 8 years ago or something, guaranteed, if we didn't screw up, we'd make enough money to keep going. Hard now. Very hard. And there's so many smart people out there pouring their hearts into their games. Our luck is that we're very unusual. There is no leadership RPG out there that we're aware of. So, but boy, spread the word. If you want, here's the last way to motivate them. You want to see a German or a Russian or a Spanish Civil War campaign or a Vietnam War campaign or a UK campaign or a Canadian or a Pacific campaign or Chinese, or a Japanese, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Think of all those small unit histories you've read, all the reasons you played Squad Leader and Combat Commander and all the things you've studied. We'd like to do them as leadership games. And we have, I think, developed skills to do them, right? We've learned how to go to the archives and talk to the historians and model the situations. And we have board game designers doing the combat side. We have professional writers. We could, in theory, think of your favorite book that you admire or, hero. We could bring that alive to some degree. And that's the opportunity. But if you don't buy our copies or you pirate and distribute it, then you won't see more Burdens of Command. Pretty simple.
Well, I think, with the way you're building this decision thing up here for management, there's like a market. I think there's other markets that could be used for in the business sense. You can use this as a training tool for management, digitally for managers.
There are some people out there who are military vets who go and train people in business management based on their battlefield, et cetera, experience. And I've had some of them express interest. I just can't name names today without permission. So, but I hope we'll do some. I mean, there's a lot of literature out on leadership, right? So we've had a decent number of people in the do leadership stuff follow us and support us, and so there's some really interesting opportunities eventually, right, to put you really focus on the decisions more than the game qualities of it. It will be a game. We hope it will be engaging is the other word, right? Not just experience. It will engage you. You'll have tough decisions like a good game would do. It's, otherwise go read the book if you just want the history. But we do think maybe we can use the interactive fiction side is just fantastic and flexible. It doesn't give a damn what you want. If you want to be space aliens, World War II, you could, right?
Sure.
Just be weird. So it's pretty open to what people's imagination are. And I'm very eager to support modders long term. So we're building the tools to support people doing their own. And what a surprise. We had some playtesters come in. It was very cool. Right away, they put in am I getting it right? Point to Hawk, the Ranger Assault. Yeah. Or no, not Point to Hawk. Sorry, I'm getting that confused because I'm going to be playing pretty soon Crowbar.
Yeah, Point to Hawk.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Winter's Assault on D-Day to get the artillery. I forget the name.
Oh, yeah, when it went after the 88s.
Yeah, so right away you put that in. So that was pretty cool, nice. Right? So you can go off and put your favorite scenarios in, but this time you can put the fiction in. The wonderful little squad leader scenarios where you have the paragraph and the aftermath. Well, you can go to town on that in the ambush way in our engine with just a standalone scenario.
And Brant has a question here. He says, are there any UCMJ actions? Is there an external force pressuring you the way you talked about your internal subordinates do? So you have outside pressures, higher ups trying to get you to do things that, maybe, the way you're dealing with the internal subordinates.
Yeah, that's very tricky. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So this is an example of learning. So what I mean is we didn't do this early on, but I think we do it later as we started to figure it out. So I believe the way it works, it's been some while since I went through all the fiction.
Sorry for the distraction. He just wanted to say hey real quick.
Yeah, he's just waving.
Hey, welcome. Is your daddy better let you win sometimes?
Here, hold on.
I mean, you better let your daddy win.
And then you're going to bed.
He's going to put him on the mic.
You let your daddy win sometimes, right? I can't hear him. That was a great thing to say about your dad.
Couldn't hear what he said. I don't think the mic was up to his
My
mic.
son's been playing games with me, all my 3 sons and daughters, since they were like 5 or 6. What did we start with? Candyland. I won't say in public how I feel about Candyland here with him present.
Your grognard card gets taken from you now.
But I love my children. I love my children.
No. Hey, games. There's tons of different games, and there's games for everyone. Everyone has played all different types of games, including Candyland with kids, and even
I know a lot of fun ones and Talisman and so forth. So anyway, back to the question. So we do. If you don't take the hill because you're such a good guy, you love your men. You don't want them to die, right? So you don't take the crazy risks. The major will have some opinions about what you just did, and if you continue to not take the hills because you're such a nice bleeding heart, you may get relieved eventually. I'm going to be careful now, and I'm not sure we do that, but I think we do. And in any case, that's what we should do if we don't. And I think our intent for the game mechanic. Now I'm back to waving hands. I try to do the official signal of bullshit. Is sorry, I hope your son couldn't hear me there. I hope.
No, he's in bed. He's good.
Okay, sorry.
And I say worse.
Mother's coming for me now. The gippy gal. So you will have prestige, like in Panzer General, to spend on buying replacements for your units, especially influence the higher ups on it. So you do a good job taking the hill, etc. You're going to get more prestige because the higher ups are pleased with you. Oh God, yes. But if you don't, you won't get as much, even if your men are happy. So you might have a crew that trusts you, but you're not able to replace the losses some. And you could argue how historic that is or not, but the pressure. But the really, really evil mechanic we have intending for that stage of campaign design is, hey, go look at Band of Brothers. What happened to the poor bastards, right? When they did a good job, what happened? Oh, great job, Band of Brothers. Why don't you take this easy situation next? Because, you've worked hard and you've paid in blood. So, of course, you should have eaten. No, they gave them the next horrible situation. So what we plan to do is, you did a great job. will automatically game bounce. Well, I shouldn't tell you that. That's kind of fun. I can't resist. Evil game designer. Guess what? You get the next crappy one that's even harder because you did such a great job. Congratulations. You get the what you know what sandwich. So on the other hand, it would be a nice balance the other way. You didn't do so well. It'd probably be a little more on the compassionate side. We might actually give you a little more prestige. I think that's actually rethinking it now. You'll get more because they want you to succeed. Okay, you're not handling it, Captain. You're going to get more this time. I'll give you the tanks. Don't screw up again because I gave you my tanks.
But that's kind of accurate, though. Like when we were running gun truck missions, we had the same squad running multiple missions because they were good.
That's right.
So the staff sergeant, the LT, they didn't want to send out their crap squad. So
so it's a wonderful balancing mechanism, right? You do a really good job. The game gets harder because it should get harder, and then at some point you might actually get to have a cynical stage, right? Where you're like, well, screw it. My men have done enough. I'm not sending Dearborn here, who's been with me since 1942, up your damn hill in 1944. I'll say I will, but if you get invested in your immersion player enough, you might think, Jesus, he doesn't deserve death at this stage,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
He's my short time. Put him in the back.
I think we do now to undercut the game. I think we didn't do a good enough job. But here's where I'd critique the game. There are many critiques, but one, studying again, I probably put a little more internal conflict into the game between the characters. They're probably a little too band of brothers, help each other. Though there's some conflicts there, right? Probably there should have been more of that to be more narratively gripping. You can argue whether accurately or not, but go watch a Vietnam War film. Certainly some people not getting along in the typical Vietnam War film, and that's always engaging. So we may not have done as great a narrative job there, but that's
a little different though. You're talking about Vietnam, so that's not an all volunteer force. Those are people who are forced to be there. Their morale's not going to be
so that might be different inherently. So
the morale was different in World War II, which again wasn't an all volunteer force, but
I'm just
most of the guys wanted to be there.
Writers would probably encourage us to have more internal conflict for a more exciting narrative. Let me turn on a little light here.
We can see.
So, not for anything, Luke, but if you're still working on some music, I know a guy who knows a guy.
The Dan guy?
Dan, he's not even picking up on it.
Talk to Chris. You can always send stuff to Chris Scribner, who's I can give you his Twitter account. He's a composer, and we have people approach us, and we'll pass it to him, and that way I pass the buck.
There you go, Dan.
Go with some music like from the new Doom game, Doom Eternal.
Oh.
I like the soundtrack for that.
There's a game right there. The original Doom. Now, anybody who played that at the time, that was groundbreaking at the time. That and Castle Wolfenstein, that 3 first-person shooter. Yeah. Doom was one where I think a lot of people may laugh at it to a degree today. But when you first played it, you put on those headphones and you hear the growling and the grunting and the background from the all around you, I should say, with that MIDI music playing, which was kind of eerie and spooky because that was the cutting edge at the time. And you're running around with your keyboard. You were like with the lights off and everything. Man, that just sucked you right in, and you felt the fear.
Chris is very sophisticated on sound stuff. He's having to use a kind of engine that most war games might not use called Fmod, which is very sophisticated on sound manipulation. And let me put it this way. What we did was I went off and I took a clip from, I think it's Battle of Bloody Gulch from Band of Brothers. You can find it on YouTube. It's really amazing battle to watch. Clip about 8 or 9 minutes long on YouTube. And analyze the soundtrack of that, right? Why is that so compelling? And there's some really interesting things going on that, Spielberg and the elite crew, which we can never get close to, but we can learn from, do about conveyance of battle or people in a battle, and there's chaos going on. Most games, it's, fire the machine gun, bang, 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 good sound, stop. No battlefield. It's not like that, right? Sounds continue. The chaos escalates. The pressure grows. Just everything's going down. We are hoping that's the design direction we're going. We're designing to try to give that sense of auditory chaos as you ramp up the battle and the enemy ramps up the battle soundtrack ramps up. That's not built yet. Bullshit, waving hand signal again, but we are actively working on that design right now so that we can't do Spielberg's Band of Brothers soundtrack. What a shock. But we can do your soundtrack, we hope, right? based on what's going on, what units are firing, ongoing. And I think some people will complain, honestly, because it will become very busy in a way that will probably stress you, right? You know, in real battlefields, you have stress, a lot going on, a lot of pressure. And it's not very conducive to kicking back with a beer, you know. On the other hand, it does amp the pressure somewhat realistically, but then they could also critique us and say, hey, you know, you did a turn-based game. You wanted to amp the pressure. Why didn't you keep it real time? So, you know, damn if you do, damn if you don't. But we will do that because I think it's a really interesting thing to try.
You know, Grant has another question. He says, are you writing the letters home for the casualties? It seems like that could be a good incentive to throw guys' lives away.
Excellent. Yes.
All right.
Now, Hideo Kojima tries to do a lot of stuff that you're saying. Act tries. He did a lot of. Do you know Hideo Kojima from Metal Gear Solid?
No, I don't. Oh, no, I don't. Please go ahead. Tell me about it.
He always incorporates some sort of realism in his game. Like, if you're going into the jungle and going into the water, where are you going to get leeches? So you have to take care of the leeches with what? Do you have a cigarette? If you don't have a cigarette, is it wet? This and that. He incorporated that in his games, which was pretty cool.
Sound engineers are really sophisticated out there in the experiments they do. We can't afford tons of invent our own sounds. So what we do is draw on a lot of libraries because we don't have the resources for that level of creativity. On the other hand, not done yet. Notice the magic hands, you can translate again. But for instance, Chris is trying. Chris, I'm ready, pegging you to the wall. You got to deliver all this now because I made it public. So no choices now, no excuses, Chris. So he's hoping, like, you know, footfalls on a wood hex will sound different than footfalls in the open, etc. That kind of thing. Now that's not going out and making the slug sounds yourself. We don't claim to do that. We won't. I do think Chris did a few sound captures himself out on jogs, but mostly not. We are drawing from library. We're very hard. Rob Mathis, who's a former U.S. Army captain, armor in Iraq, a novelist, great novel on Iraq and other novels, our community lead. He went out there and tracked down legitimate sounds as best we can manage for all the weapons and so forth. So, you know, he has his own experience to draw on if it seems credible. Then we have people with some decent historical background in World War II, seeing if they think it's believable. So we're trying to make sure if it's an MG42, it's an MG34. I mean, 42, etc.
If it's 42, it's a 34.
We put up a slightly wrong sound, and somebody nailed us. Where did we put up the modern equivalent of MG42, which is engineered very similarly? It's an S3 or something. I'm not an expert. And instantly, Grognard nailed our ass appropriately. But we are trying. Example of mistake. And by the way, you may know we are doing voiceovers. About 70% of our barks are voiced over. And one of the coolest things is we got the medic from Band of Brothers, Shane Taylor, to be the voice of Sergeant Grant. Oh my God!
Oh wow!
Oh, that's awesome.
So cool. So he's really fantastic, as you might guess. And that was a privilege.
Still hooked on morphine?
What?
Is he still hooked on morphine?
Better ask him. He's online. You ask him.
Are any of the guys on your little team like enlisted personnel or former enlisted? Because sounds like
we have sergeants and enlisted. I want to be careful on that. Definitely sergeants. Yes, I want to be sure I'm not misleading. I'd have to go through it in my head. Yes, definitely. For instance, I instantly think of Marine private who does our photo editing, Eric. Hey, Eric Benjamin. And I'm pretty sure other ones. My brain's, fading a little bit. So I want to speak to that for a moment. So we focus on the lieutenants and captain and one sergeant, and we do have some enlisted characters in the game. But why? NCOs are critical, right? I mean, they're the guys who are actually there making people move. And,
they're the backbone.
They're the backbone, right? So why aren't we paying attention to them? Okay, this is a game design issue. My feeling is so psychology, 7 plus or minus 2. Human brain's not good at more than 7 things plus or minus 2. Like if I asked you to remember a number that was 13 digits long, you'd have a hard time unless you chunk it into 4-digit things like years or whatever. 7 plus or minus 2. So I just kind of following the same principle in the NPCs. I want you to empathize. If you don't give a damn about Dearborn because I've given you 32 characters to learn, then it's not going to, you won't feel any burden of command. Oh, that's character 32. What was his name again? Yeah, send him up the hill. Right. On the other hand, if you have 4 or 5 guys, we put a lot of effort in, which we do. And that's where we got Chris Avalon to give us advice, to try and, build empathy and so forth. And also William Byrne. Bernard, who's a guy who's written books. I'm name dropping, yes, deliberately because they deserve it and because I want the game to sell. Wayne Bernhardt's written books that have sold millions of copies. Go look him up. He gave us advice on empathy. We do a limited number of characters to try to build empathy for them so that you bond and you feel the burden of command, not little sprite, not a little panzer, sprite sending whatever. So my point is that therefore we had to make cuts. We couldn't do it all. And if it's going to be you're the captain, we had to cut corners. And so the natural thing was to have the people directly reporting to you most of the time. Of course, you have, your corps sergeant, and it's right, it would be more than one. And your 4 lieutenants, actually. You have a weapons lieutenant and 3 rifle platoon lieutenants, and focused on that. Now, we may do an armored someday campaign, and that would be really interesting because we'll put you in the tank. There's a wonderful little roguelike free out there called Armored Commander. Put you in the tank. Think Fury. And, you would have no choice but to get to know your enlisted very closely, right? So we would make them central characters in that one. So it was a game design decision. I'm not defending it as a right.
No, it's a different war. The officers will experience something in a much different fashion than the enlisted troops on the ground will. And I was just curious if you had that perspective coming from both angles.
Oh, that question, that's a really interesting one. So we do, and we try to make Grant articulate it. There's a great book out there called World of War. And this is sort of this guy studied a lot of accounts on what the experiences were like. And he talks about two examples. First, on the divide. So the officers in World War II, especially depending on the nationality you're talking about, there was a class divide. So the officers didn't curse much because that was kind of a sign of, I'm better, I'm more educated, whatever the hell they would put it. And the enlisted cursed plenty in World War II. So we try to enforce that in the barks and dialect to pull that out more. There are issues, there's lots of interesting stuff like officers getting separate cabins in the ship over, whereas the men are piled more like sardines in, being pretty ugly when the torpedo hits, kind of like the Titanic movie, right? Upper class versus lower class.
Yep.
But I want to be very careful about calling out nationality differences casually because that's pretty charged. But as you might imagine, the American versus the British versus German versus French, etc., there would be national differences on how those were treated. We do put effort into what we feel were a fair distinctions. And John McManus read all our narrative chunks, and it's our responsibility ultimately. But he's a historian, and he tells us where he thinks we're going off or not. And we do go off sometimes because it's a game, it's an experience. But we try to be responsible. And when we do go off, we'll try to signal off and say, we stole this from a different battle. It's not the battle I was in, but it could have happened here, and therefore we think it's appropriate, so forth. So distinction between enlisted, we do bring up problems for the enlisted. We hope you'll worry about the feet of the enlisted, like avoiding trench foot. There's Anzio. It basically was Italy, 43. It's basically became World War I trench warfare. The Germans were kicking our butts there, and worrying about trench foot was really important, and worrying about the hunger. And you will have choices like, should you press on here because you're under pressure, or should you actually take time out to get the men a hot meal, that kind of stuff.
Well, you can have a sequel. You've got this one, Burden of Command, and then after this is all done, you got the engine built. You can have something like the Hardship of Leadership, and you can have that be a platoon commander or platoon sergeant, or even down to the squad level, how it be squad leader.
Yes.
So that way you can deal with that specific thing just with the enlisted side.
I would love to do some things. I want to stop and yes, there's definitely do some things like I'll just say that.
There's 50 games we're coming up with tonight.
Wow, it's really. After a while, burden becomes a little burdensome. Got to be serious. Can't say the wrong thing. Oh Christ! I do want to. God damn it! I want to do some Kelly's Heroes eventually. Do a Hollywood pack.
Well, I do have a
plaque for that. Like, oh my God, you can't say Burden of Command and do a Hollywood pack. So, we'll have to be very careful because Burden of Command, which is fair. But
I do have a question for you.
Heroes too.
Because you keep saying board game. Okay, so here's a question.
Yeah, good.
Your favorite board game?
Yeah, narrow it down.
Wow.
I couldn't do it.
Pressure. Favorite board game in the past year?
Oh, in the past year?
Yeah. We'll make
Tommy, my 11-year-old, wins. Because you might be hearing me. Imperial Assault is my favorite game in my own words, which is a tactical Star Wars game.
That's a good game.
play a lot of that. It is a good game, actually. It's a very good game. I enjoy it. I don't play many games of any sort generally anymore because my time so limited. When I've had a little time, I've been doing some Conflict of Heroes because I was interested in understanding the AI solo, and that was good to do with Tommy. Back in the day when I had more time for board games, well, I get to show off a little bit. Teenager, what is it? Third Right, Rise and Fall, Third Right. I'm a little rusty on it now. I couldn't afford the board map, so my friend and I we wanted 2 copies so we could play at each house. So we bought one board, and then we drew by hand the other one. In fact, we didn't even have the board for a while, so we were looking at the general magazine articles. What do you think that hex is? But the text is over it. I think it says Calais. Let's go look at this map. And it was pretty funny, really, every dollar counted at a certain age. And so I played a lot of that. And then Totala Krieg took up way too much of my time. That's a strategic World War II game, probably in my early 30s. And I had to swear off it. I was playing PBM, and, I was spending 5 hours on my turn because that game lends itself to that. And by God, I would have taken Moscow. The only condition under which I wasn't going to take Moscow was if I rolled a 6 and a 1. So you can guess what I rolled. And I worked really hard to get that perfect design. That and Combat Commander I really loved the design of that. And I got my wife to play that. So pretty happy with that. She's pretty cool. So, and then on the non-war games, let's see. We tend to play cooperative board games of various sorts. So there are many, good designs out there. I could go into that. I don't know how much the audience wants that. But the strategic ones I tend to like, and the tactical. Is there anything else I'd point out before stopping? Oh, card driven. Yeah. So one of the real privileges here to name drop again is we have following us is, the wonderful designer of all the CDGs, starting with We the People.
I think I know that guy.
Yeah.
Mark something. Mark
Herman.
Got 2 first names.
I love the card driven games. My favorite actually was the in that spirit. Sorry, Mark. Actually, is Barbarossa to Berlin because I love the World War II again. So I could go on. Thank you. Right. So I haven't played as much coin. I want to play more coin for Voco, who also a member of our community. So we listen very hard to the board game designers.
Dan wants to play coin.
Playing Dave Thompson. I'm playing Dave Thompson. Dave, I'm playing Dave Thompson games.
Yeah, his Undaunted Normandy, it's rather new, is good for like a wife. Like it's a good mixture war game that you could bring someone who's kind of not into war games into a war game, just with how easy it plays.
Yeah.
I just got my hands on it. I had to beg him for a copy because I
just saw you were playing that online. Yeah, YouTube. Yep. Well, hey, that's not fair. How about you guys? All right, I got to ask a tough question. So you make enemies here. Which is your favorite tactical game? Tactical game. Come on.
Lock and load tactical.
Glad I didn't get asked that. Thank God. Go ahead. Who? Come on, Dan. Dan, you've been asking me.
Dan, go.
What's your favorite tactical game?
I just got the Lock and Load Tactical Digital, which for some reason crashes on my Mac. Does anybody have a Mac here?
No, we're computer users.
We're not part of the master race.
I'm
Lock and Load. Mark, he was one of the early ones to push narrative with the squad base.
Yeah, I love all that narrative stuff. I love events. I love things that just come out of the ground. You know what? There's a game called Heart of Darkness. Nuclear Winter '68.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I just love it because there's that third party of creatures or irradiated people that just come out and attack whichever side.
It's
you can play Lock and Load
digitally,
by the way. It's 100% historical all the way through. Nobody say anything about mechs. Go ahead. I'm teasing Mark a little bit on that, but he's happy he did it. So go ahead. That is actually a fun game.
And I mean, Combat Commander. I really enjoyed Combat Commander a lot. I've got every single module that they put out.
Okay, Nate and Gimpy, come on. You don't get off on this one. I want to pay back here.
Well, they've already covered Lock and Load Tactical, and I've actually got more videos of that up than damn near anything else. But I will add to that, like as a side with Lock and Load Tactical, would be Conflict of Heroes. And like I said, I was talking it up earlier with the third edition. Uva and the gang, they knocked it out of the park. I mean, they really took the game to the next level. The way the spent mechanics work, the quality of the components. I mean, everything is just top.
Clever thing
notch.
on Conflict of Heroes to say. I mean, and there's so many levels. It's clever, and some things we take from it. But one of them, the art, very interesting board game art. The board game artist he got for it wrote a really interesting article on how he did the art for it. If you look at the map art in Conflict of Heroes, the backyard of the Russian farmhouse has little stalks of wood, and maybe even the axe left out and whatnot. Why? The artist, which we cribbed from, learning from him, he said, look, you want to tell stories with the art on the map. You know, people must have walked around. How would they have walked around? They would have walked over the pigsty or the chicken, you know, a coop or whatever. So make a little trail there. So when I was working with the artist, you know, same kind of thing. We're tile, so we can't be quite as loose with it. But, you know, put a bike in front of the house because somebody lives in that house. So Conflict of Heroes is very subtle on many levels. It's telling stories just with a little art in the hexes.
Yeah,
No, I agree with you. I think their art is fantastic. I mean, it's
almost
like I said, a
photorealistic.
tie for me. Yeah. Lock and Load, I think, brings a different thing than Conflict of Heroes does. Unfortunately, I haven't played Combat Commander, so I can't comment on that. And I refuse to get into ASL because I have so many hobbies as it is that I will get divorced if I get into ASL.
And you got Lock and Load Tactical better.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to like anything else if you like ASL, are you?
That's the thing. Like, I've seen some of these people's collections of ASL, and it's huge. They have everything, and it's just down to the minutia. And if I really got into that and like focused, there's no way. Like, I'd have to
rabbit hole.
Story creating core design. There's no question about it, you know, and a wonderful attention to detail. Maybe too wonderful at times.
Yeah, I mean, I heard they have like sewer rules and for
at least
for a manhole.
probably sewer variant rules. So for each region, it's crazy.
There's sewer rules based on the time of year and time of day.
So, you know, we're all going to get hate mail from ASL people now for probably saying some things wrong in there. But I have a friend who's very into that. So I like ASL. I just don't have the time to commit to it.
So let me see here. I want to take a look. We've got
Mo's not off. Come on.
What?
No.
Oh, I already said Lock and Load Tactical.
Oh, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, Lock and Load Tactical, and
Oh,
I
Mark.
agree. I agree with Gimpy. Also with Conflict of Heroes, I think it's fantastic. The only other system I've not played yet, well, there's several. I haven't played ATS Advanced DeBrook. I have not played Fighting Formations yet. I have it. I have played Combat Commander.
Once, yeah.
And I'm going to. You want to talk about hate mail? I didn't like Combat Commander.
This should get some more call out. There's some people. This is a really interesting design by a Marine lieutenant. You know, so Fields of Fire.
I have it.
It's
I've
a
not played
leadership tactical game. It's just not a leadership Well, it is some degree leadership RPG, but maybe not as narratively heavy as we do it.
I've just not played it yet. The like you know everybody's talking about Combat Commander. I was not a fan of it. I think it is a great design. It just, for me, it didn't work because to me it felt like it was purely a hand management game wrapped in a tactical game, and that part of it took me out of it because I played it a couple times. I played it solitaire and I was like, okay, this isn't bad because I could play both sides. But when I played it opposed, I played it 2 games opposed, and the one time was really bad. The one game we played was bad, where we were constantly getting bad hands. We were having to dump our hands and stuff. And I was like, man, this is just not getting anywhere for either one of us. It was Pacific. That was the one we played. So I don't know.
Frank, you guys about what you like and dislike. So that makes this a really honest channel, which is nice.
Yeah.
Have you, Luke? You mentioned it earlier that you had played Conflict now.
Conflict Hero many times.
So you've been playing it with Steve or something like that?
Oh, I mean Contact Now.
Contact Now. That's the
Red Storm.
Red Eclipse.
I have played it. That's a wonderful chaos engine, and then the cards. So he's always pushing me to have more chaos, and of course we have. Steve and I are like mine around some of the design principles for the tactical, and I don't think
anyone's really like-minded with Steve.
Well, there's some truth to that. Steve is a former U.S. Army sergeant engineer. Steve has opinions, but
don't get me wrong. I love Steve. He's a great guy.
Oh yeah, no, not at all. Well, Brant says we won't get hate mail from ASL guys because they can't find the chart to roll on to send the hate mail, which is true.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there was one. Honestly, I wouldn't at this point.
And Matt says he's been playing Undaunted Normandy with his son nearly every night lately. He loves it. And David, the designer, says that's awesome.
That's great.
Yep, that we just my wife just did her unboxing video, and I'm getting ready to do a little review through of it because I can't cover it solo specifically. It doesn't have solo rules, but it's too good for me not to cover. So
Right.
I'm gonna make the exception and jump on that one because I
Well,
think it's just such a good crossover.
I want to do something real quick. I want to cut you guys off for 1 second. We've got we're down to 11 people here. We were up a little higher, but now we're down to 11. I want to say something here because we've all been stuck inside for a couple weeks now, and it looks like it's going to go for a little longer. And it's sucked for a lot of people. Yeah, obviously.
Yes.
Depends on how you've been
people here?
spending your time.
Well, yeah, I've been working, so I got my work computer right behind me. But for everybody that's stuck here, and this, unfortunately, because of the current situation, will have to be continental United States only. Being that we're talking tactical games, who wants a copy of Last 100 Yards?
Good deal.
Nice. Very interesting design. I've been watching videos on that. Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see who gets the first one in.
By the way, we have a similarity there, somewhat independently. So he has sort of platoon activation to give sort of momentum and initiative. And we are a platoon activation game as it happens independently. So you'll pick a lieutenant, right? We're leader focused. His platoon activates and you get to move them all before the enemy can do anything, which is in the spirit of his momentum stuff.
You mean you activate the entire platoon, or?
You activate the entire platoon. We do enforce one of the things we've taken a risk on. This was a real design debate. We enforce organizational structure. So the lieutenant cannot randomly go. So most squad level games, like Combat Commander or pick one, typically it's something like the leader is near a unit, he can activate it or within 2 hexes or whatever, which is a nice design, very clean and simple, and it's hard to do anything different. Fields of Fire does try to do different, but it takes more stuff around it to do it. So, but we can enforce it on the computer. So if you're a lieutenant, you're born in charge of first platoon, you can only order first platoon. Now the captain can order anybody, right? So the captain's kind of a king in a sense. He has privilege to add momentum to any part of the board by getting over there and helping on the battlefield. But Dearborn's limited to what Dearborn can do with his guys and how that, and some of them may have gotten stressed over the campaign and he may have a weak crew, but one good squad, and he himself may be having issues. But the point is he's a platoon activation. You can't just randomly do the perfect from all places, flanking and so forth. Unless, of course, you've got the captain. The captain can't do everything. So when you use a captain, when's the right time to use that extra momentum? As you might guess, the captain's particularly effective.
Got to learn to use your delegation powers.
Right.
Yeah.
So we enforce the structures, right? And but you can choose, this machine gun will be allocated from the weapon team to Dearborn squad. So Dearborn and the weapons platoon leader can order it this scenario.
So the winner of the game is, I guess, this
That's
guy.
a great gift.
Brant.
Me.
Hey, Brant.
Bayonet Brant is going to get it. And
I recognize Bayonet Brant. Thanks
yeah. Armchair Dragoons. I'll be chatting with him tomorrow night. And he actually was the first one to post it up there. And then unfortunately, Von Deacon was not paying attention because he said, wait a minute, a free game? I just woke up. Stay awake and you can win things on this show.
All right. I'll just a free game between every sentence. I'm learning.
Don't worry about it, Von Deacon. I don't have that one either. I was thinking about tossing my hands up.
Mo will give you a free game.
Yeah. I will. I'll toss out that for you guys who do want a copy of Conflict of Heroes, I am doing a giveaway for that.
Which one?
It's Player's Choice or Winner's Choice: Awakening the Bear or Storms of Steel.
By the way, Normandy's apparently getting close. He was saying that the other night, so that would be really cool. But it's 1940, not Normandy, 1940 France.
Hold on. So, you said Uva said it's getting close. Uva said it's getting close. So 22. I love you, Uva. You know that, but soon or close and Academy. That's Academy.
He'll be done with right.
So it's just
good thing he doesn't use hand grenades.
No, we love picking on Uva, but we're actually going to hopefully get him on here pretty soon because I like to do with all this lock-in stuff. I want to do another show here pretty soon, maybe even Friday night if you guys are available. Nate and Dan, if you guys want to get on and have some fun, because have just a loose and loosey-goosey show. Maybe give away a game or two so Von Deacon stay awake.
Actually, speaking of which, Brant just said to actually give it to Von Deacon instead.
Wow. Is Von Deacon in the U.S.?
Oh, that's generous.
Von Deacon, are you in the United States? Are you
while
awake?
Well, it takes him a second to type. While he's typing it up, I will let you guys know, though, if you want to enter for the chance for Conflict of Heroes, just post a comment and subscribe to the channel. It's the third campaign I'm doing, so it says COH Conflict of Heroes Campaign 3 Part 1.
By the way, I want to shout out Mo, not only because that act of generosity reminded me early on when we were particularly tiny, like one always is in the early days. Mo was very supportive, and as a vet and a board game designer, listening to these crazy people waving their hands, and gave us support early on. So very appreciative of that.
Oh, thank you. Everyone in this community is really fantastic, and the board game community is really great. The war game community is outstanding, and it's because it really is a band of brothers and sisters. There are female war gamers out there, but band of brothers is the traditional term used, and we're talking band of brothers all night. So I think it really is that way. It's got that same mentality that everyone's involved, everyone's wanting to see everybody succeed, and everybody wants these games to be made, because the more games that are made, the more games we can play. So hey,
That's right.
It's a win-win.
That's right.
So Luke, I'll tell you, yours is actually going to have an honor. You're going to be the first real, I would say, video game to be covered on my channel, because I just recently started doing the screen recording. I updated my software so I could do screen recording and all that crap, because I usually just did the cameras. I've done a couple of videos on like Lock and Load Tactical, the digital, and the Middle Sea coming out, the sequel to Thunder in the East. Yep, great game. But those are board games, so like Vassal version of the board game.
Yeah.
Yours is going to be the first that's actually an actual video game that I'm willing to cover on the channel. So
by the way, I hope there'll be a time all four of us will talk tactical games. It's wonderful to have the attention to Burden of Command tonight, but it'd be fun to just talk about, of course, I'd bring up Burden where relevant, but the various pros and cons of all these games specifically, because I think grognards and wargamers love talking about what's right and wrong about each of them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're talking to the right people, dude.
Yeah,
Your game.
Realistic. We'll argue about that all night.
Yeah. Your game's all up our alley. Everything we do is right up your alley. It just works in every angle.
Luke, what about platform? What platform is Burden of Command going to be on?
This will be Windows,
PC,
Steam, eventually probably Good Old Games, not initially, and that's in our Windows platform. Maybe Mac, but it would depend on sales and technological issues. Linux, probably no, to be honest, because there's such I've read now from our game devs, there's such diversity in that platform, it would be a lot of money for us.
Yeah.
And then still pissing people off trying to do it because it's so fractured. That's what I'm told. Not an expert. So definitely Windows, maybe Mac, depending on sales. Probably not iOS.
Dan wants Mac.
Probably not mobile unless somebody convinced me it's more doable than we think. We're in Python, which is a particular computer language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of like mobile's kind of like the cheaper end of it, and Burden of Command just seems like it's a higher quality.
Well,
because it's RPG, it would work on a
Civilization on iOS. So some crazy things are doable. You never know, but I don't think it'll be us.
Well, I'll leave that one up to you. You know far more about it than I do.
That's I think that's pretty much gonna close out the show. Dan, do you have any last questions?
Yeah, but I'm not going to ask him.
Why not? Because it's not going to be on Mac.
Because he'll keep it there forever.
Now he's like,
my heart is broken.
There are Windows emulators in Mac. One of the developers uses that to act sometimes to run Burden, so it can be done. But I'm
going to have to do that. I'm going to have to do that.
Dan, are you crying?
Almost.
You look like you're going to cry, dude. I just want to reach out and like give you a hug.
Don't hug me, no.
We would have done it on Mac if you told us early, Dan.
Nate, do you have any questions? Any last questions?
A lot of Salesforce, right?
Yeah.
I'll give it my best shot.
I'm not going to hold Luke up.
Luke,
I am definitely going to be keeping an eye on it as
absolutely.
It develops.
No, Luke, do you have any questions or closing comments?
I appreciate all the people who showed up and were asking questions. I couldn't really look easily at the questions. So, I apologize if your question wasn't answered. I hope you'll come by. This is slightly self-interested, but I do mean this genuinely. Come by, because you don't have to follow me. Just come by the Burden of Command account on Twitter, which I run. and ask me your question, either private message or public. Public's more fun because other people get to see. I will respond, short of, and ping me again if somehow I don't, but I'm pretty thorough about responding. I love talking to people, so come by and ask your question. I apologize right now if it didn't get answered.
Do you guys have a Facebook page or is it just Twitter?
We have a Facebook page as well, so you can come back there and ask that. I don't run that one, but those do get addressed. Also, the Steam community is active. Rob, the Army captain I alluded to earlier, runs that, and he'll get the questions. So we'll answer them on the different platforms. I even check YouTube occasionally, though we run out of people, but I do try to check questions there occasionally in the Bird and Command area.
Well, if you need any help with anything with the YouTube stuff, let me know. I don't mind giving you advice about software or anything when it comes to making YouTube
eventually
videos.
on this, I hope to do some more, recording stream. I'm contemplating doing some AI, little mini dev blogs, meaning I just get on, record 2 minutes of gameplay, talk to it, and publish that. And I might come to you, and then eventually I'd love to do live like that, because we'll be able to show the game more so people can assess if they like it or not and so forth. And I'll get on, play it, and people can ask questions. But I don't know how to do that. I wrote down, for instance, tonight what you're using for this because I need help. So guidance would be helpful eventually.
Well, hey, you can always reach out to any of us, and we'll definitely help you out. Come on any of our channels and definitely showcase your stuff because, Dan's been doing a really great show, or not just No Enemies Here, but he's been doing a lot of the In Conversation shows with a lot of great chats with designers and other people in the hobby, and he's really been doing a great job with that. Nate does a fantastic job with all of his boot camp stuff and all of his reviews and playthroughs, the review throughs as he calls them. So definitely you can reach out and and of course obviously you can reach out to me as well. We'll all help you in any way we can.
Absolutely.
I find your channels a little irritating, all three of you, and I'll explain why. Honestly, I get a little upset when I watch them and thinking I want to play that. No, I'm slightly pissed at Nate's playing Space Infantry, whichever that's called. I had that one, I just don't have time. On the other hand, I do honestly I watch you guys because I don't have time to play anymore, so I got to keep up. So I'll watch the Let's Play, So I do have a clue.
Well, that's what we're all trying to do, especially now. Like I said, with everybody locked in, it's been tough for a lot of people, and a lot of people have been putting out, good amount of content. Ardwolf's been doing it. Kev Sharp's been doing it. Dan's been doing it. Nate's been doing it. I've been throwing out a couple things here and there as I can. So we're definitely
it's cool.
trying to help each other out and keep everybody busy.
Like Osprey Books has been out there, and they do.
Yeah.
They've been giving out free books, which was
4 free books a week or something.
Five actually. Yeah.
Soldiers and some air combat, and they're doing it every week, so that's a pretty cool one to check out. And there's other things like that. And the interactive fiction people, Choice of Games, and putting free games out once a week. Our writers come from that background, so you can try that out. In fact, the first chapter of every Choice of Games thing, they don't give me anything for this. It's free, so you can try out one of those. And there are some historically minded ones out there, as well as fantasy, sci-fi, etc.
Well, Hethwell says he's going to hit the rack here. It's 3 a.m.
I like to see everyone doing that.
Thank you, Heathwell.
Times are hard. Everybody's jumping together.
Thanks for being at that crazy hour, man. That's beyond the call.
Yeah,
absolutely. What were you saying, Nate?
I was just saying how it's great. Everybody's working together and doing what they can to help out. Board game companies giving discounts, people doing the free books, free streams. It's not any one person. Everybody's trying to pitch in every little bit that they can to make this time easy as possible. And it's just good to see people doing that.
And me with my optimism, everybody's together on this in the world, but 6 feet apart. And are we going to learn something after this is done?
No, you damn Canadians, you're the ones that are buying up all the meat. Did you see the article?
Hey, we'll learn things short term and then we'll forget it.
A couple went to a grocery store and they filled up 2 shopping carts full of all the meat from the meat department and went and checked out, and they were laughing and joking about it and being a-holes oh, I don't know what we're going to do with all this. And everyone is giving them death threats now. It was a news article I saw earlier.
You know what I'm sure what they are? They're sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. You got to say it like a real Canadian. Sorry.
Well, they're definitely sorry now.
So you have to support us. So
absolutely.
2 or 3, just so people think we're nice. Chris is Canadian, so
There you go. Well, again, thanks a lot, Luke, for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to all the updates coming out with Burden of Command, and we're looking forward to the eventual release.
Thank you. You guys are fantastic. Great pleasure to talk to you. I hope I'll be here again someday.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for anyone who showed up.